Every player who completes the tutorial has to take a test to gauge their strength. For that year's batch, the test was held inside a massive labyrinth. A hunter examiner warned the crowd, "If you have no talent, you should forfeit now. This is going to be dangerous." The tension in the air was thick, but it didn't seem to affect our protagonist, who was half asleep in the back, drooling while the examiner laid out the rules. Suddenly, the surroundings began to shift and warp, transforming into the labyrinth itself. Everyone else sprinted forward, but our protagonist lagged behind, calling out to the examiner, "Hey, where's the exit?" The man just stared at him, completely baffled. Was this kid seriously a newbie? Why was he wearing slippers with such a pathetic-looking outfit? And how could he be so ridiculously relaxed? The examiner, clearly annoyed, snapped, "Are you treating the hunter exam like some kind of joke?" Our hero just tilted his head and casually proposed to bet he'd finish the test in 20 seconds flat. The examiner shot him down, at first grumbling that he wasn't in the mood for games. But then our boy taunted him for being scared, and just like that, the examiner agreed to a 10 million won wager. Before another word could be said, the protagonist zipped past him and placed a hand on the labyrinth wall. The examiner was already mentally spending his easy winnings, but our hero simply reared back his fist and punched the wall with everything he had. Everyone watching the test could only stare in confusion, wondering what on earth he was doing. Then sparks flew everywhere as the entire labyrinth began to crumble. With just a single punch, he had blasted a hole straight through to the other side. Turning back, he calmly said, "See the exits right here. Now about that 10 million. The professional hunters monitoring the test were absolutely speechless. All the while, the protagonist was laughing, boasting that it was the easiest 10 million won he'd ever made. But first, let's rewind to see what happened in the tower he just came from. Inside a dungeon, people are running for their lives in a complete panic. They're being tossed around and slammed into the ground while our guy just stands there staring down the menacing final boss. The creature tries its best to look intimidating. Inching closer, but unfortunately for it, our boy just starts laughing, clearly having the time of his life. News had already spread throughout the city about this incredible player, the one who took down the boss with a single kick. The monster itself couldn't possibly comprehend how that was even possible inside the tutorial. Meanwhile, our protagonist casually asks, "So tell me, who's the real final boss here?" All while wearing a crazed grin and letting loose. It might look like he's having a blast, but in reality, he's bored completely out of his mind. Under normal circumstances, this boss kills 70 out of every 95 players who challenge it. And yet it was taken down by one flying kick from this guy. This marks his 1,394th clear. A portal appears before him, which should, in theory, finally return him to the normal world. But for him, things are never that simple. Instead, he's teleported right back to level 1 of the tutorial. He starts laughing maniacally, looking like he's about to finally snap. Dropping to his knees, he screams at the tower, begging it to just send him home already. How many more times does he have to go through this? All of his stats are ranked above S+, something that shouldn't even be achievable for a player at his stage. 12 years ago, he and his companions finally cleared the tower. Everyone was ecstatic to finally be returning to reality. But as they stepped through the portal, he alone was sent back to the very first floor. The tower system announced that he had been afflicted with a curse, and that's when his endless loop of clearing the tower began over and over again. Through the years, he's met countless other players, helping every single one of them escape, while he alone remains trapped. 12 years passed by like that, until one fateful day, he finally defeated the boss, causing the entire tower to explode. In the wake of the tower's explosion, a portal appeared. From it, the boy emerged. After 12 years of maxing out every possible stat, he was finally back on Earth. On the eve of the major hunter evaluation, news outlets were buzzing about a mysterious veteran. Information was scarce, and it looked like rookie Kang Hyun Lee was poised to steal the spotlight. Lee, a martial arts prodigy, was the focus of the journalists, who questioned if this veteran even existed. At the exam, Kang Hyun Lee dreamed of becoming a legend and was ready for battle. While others bailed at the sight of a monster, Lee stood his ground, ready to throw down. Sword in hand, he was all in for his dream. A kendo champion with a trophy case to prove it, Lee was the top hunter in his group. He knew that making a killer first impression was the key to success. Lee remembered the story of the protagonist's epic rise as an unstoppable force in the tower. Yun Lee, who witnessed it all, couldn't believe he was being overshadowed, while the victorious protagonist simply announced his return. Now during the ranking exam, Yun Lee and the others watched, stunned by the chaos that had just erupted. For safety reasons, the exam was paused, and everyone was told to hang tight and await further information. Behind the scenes, the film crew was in a full-blown panic, scrambling to find any clear footage of the chaos. The cameras, which had been focused solely on Yun Lee, completely missed the real MVP who had accidentally stolen the show. The director, spotting the hero on a monitor, declared the birth of a new superstar. A very salty Yun Lee glared at the snoozing hero while the other hunters chatted about the explosion, clueless about the veteran player in their midst. Yun Lee, however, saw a chance to snatch the spotlight right back. The committee's announcement that the next test was starting woke the hero from his nap. Determined to step out of the veteran's shadow, Yun Lee headed to the exam, ready to take on some monsters. Sword in hand, Yun Lee faced off against an ogre. Powered by magic stones and high-tech gear, the virtual showdown became a high-speed challenge to defeat as many monsters as possible in a short amount of time. Yun Lee showed off his electric swordplay, wowing the crowd with lightning that shot from his blade. Like the prodigy he was, Yun Lee unleashed a flurry of lightning-fast strikes, taking down 78 creatures and snagging the top score. Viewers watching the broadcast agreed that if it wasn't for the veteran, Yun Lee would have been the undisputed star. Our hero strolled past Yun Lee with a yawn, unfazed by the buzz, while guildmasters watched on, curious about his return. The exam kicked back into gear, and our hero had 120 seconds to take on a swarm of holographic monsters materializing around him. The audience watched the screen, their eyes glued to the action. The hero, despite being completely surrounded by monsters, remained incredibly chill. The countdown hit 0, and the monsters charged like bullets. The hero simply popped the first one's head. He was so fast the cameras couldn't keep up. The entire horde was wiped out in an instant. It was as if the hero had vanished and the monsters' heads just started popping on their own. Even the experienced guild leaders couldn't track his movements. They wondered if he was using a secret skill, but dismissed the idea since he was fresh out of the tutorial. Watching the slow-motion replay, it was clear the hero was just strolling up to the monsters and casually taking them out. No fancy moves were needed. This insane level of power and speed freaked out the guildmasters, who wondered what on earth he'd been doing in the tower. When time ran out, the hero stood alone in the room, surrounded by defeated monsters. He took down 248 monsters, solo smashing the old record. The online crowd goes wild over his epic performance. Some think he used magic to move like that. Yun Lee, reading these comments, crushes his phone, super annoyed that everyone's talking about Kim, not him. Fuming with rage, Yun Lee punches his room's wall repeatedly. He works so hard, even using shady tricks to climb the ranks, only to be outdone by some random. In the waiting room, a woman shows him a list, asking what's up with it. She explains it's a list of guilds wanting to meet him. This woman is Alice, the head of intelligence for the Hunter Association. She says loads of guilds are keen on him thanks to his potential. The hero glances at the list, realizing this important woman isn't just here for that. He asks why she's really here, and she says it's personal. Besides wanting to meet the hunter who shook the world, Alice suggests he join the Ares Guild, handing him a contract right after. Joining the guild would net him 10 billion. Shocked by the huge sum, he jokes if Korea's in an economic crisis or if the currency tanked. Alice explains the economy's booming. Even the lands where he used to live now cost about 1.3 billion. The hero's obviously stunned by this news. Things have changed a lot since he entered the tower. Alice adds, the Ares Guild is super keen on him and willing to pay double to sign him. He wonders if someone from the government's pushing a guild, and Alice says it's a personal request from the Ares Guild scout. Alice says he doesn't need to decide now, but the hero cuts her off, already deciding he doesn't want to be tied to any guild, tossing the contract on the table. At first, Alice thinks he's joking, but the hero stands firm on his decision. After bouncing out of the room, he's deep in thought about the offer. In this world, it's all about give and take. They didn't just throw 10 billion at him for kicks. If he said yes, he'd have to hustle, chilling in bed surrounded by a mountain of snacks. The lazy dude's all about that no-work, comfy life. Back to the convo, she asks if he's going to become a hunter, but he drops some knowledge, saying even without guild hookups, some hunters roll solo. She thinks he's kind of full of himself, but still says if he changes his mind, he can hit up the number on the card. Lying in bed, he's ticked off. It took him forever to find out about mercenary hunters. If he'd known sooner, he wouldn't have wasted time on the hunter test and could have been snoozing. He peeps at the guild list and spots some familiar names. 5 days later, in a Japanese joint, he doesn't recognize the folks he's chatting with. The 3 big shots of Korea's top guilds are right there. They were his old crew 12 years back. Xiaoquan, who was his age, is now an old dude. Shai Si-hyun turned into a total heartthrob. And Seo Yan, who was just a bookworm kid, is practically a whole new person. He remembers how Si-hyun used to hide behind him, making him super awkward. And that time, Seo Yan peed herself when she saw Bangzi on the 14th floor, thinking she was a goner. He's stoked to see his pals again and munches on his sushi, wondering how he survived 12 years without it. They reminisce about the day they nabbed the merman, and he kept singing about wanting sushi. He even sliced the merman's tail for sashimi. It's obvious he's always been a wild card in that tower. His friends thinking back say it was a regular thing to hear tales about him inside the tower. Curious, Kim asks what these stories are all about. He finds out that he's basically become a legend, and the things he pulled off in the tower are still shown on TV, which makes him a little nervous. The random things he did just to kill time are now being broadcast, and he wonders which ones, since he did a ton of crazy stuff. A lot of his antics were pretty embarrassing, like the time he cleared a dungeon in his birthday suit. Another time he did it while dressed as a goblin. They say his most legendary moments are when he defeated a boss while busting a move, and the day he took down every monster from the 1st to the 10th floor using only his feet. He's just relieved his more awkward escapades never saw the light of day. While munching on his sushi, he brushes it off, saying those were just things he felt like doing at the time. His old crew, who already knew he was a beast after the evaluation test, now just see this as confirmation. He explains that being trapped in that tower made him do all sorts of things, even taking on a disciple. He can't recall the exact moment, but it was while he was kicking back between floors 50 and 60 that he found a kid who'd been abandoned in the tower. Back then, he got the bright idea to create his own martial arts style. So donning a big cloak and a skull mask, he approached the kid acting like some kind of mysterious master. After that, he began training the boy, making him balance jars of water on one foot, lift ridiculously heavy objects, and focus his chakra to shatter a pillar. But it was all a total sham. The only thing he actually did was use his own brute strength. Looking back on it, he feels a little guilty, and is really glad he wore a mask because he definitely never wants to run into that kid. He asks how things have been on the outside, and the conversation continues. Back home and lying in bed, he pulls up his status window again, noticing the tutorial limit message is finally gone. His age is listed as 24 again, as if he'd truly lost 12 years of his life. His new goal is to stack some cash and live a nice, quiet life until he kicks the bucket. But even though a bunch of system messages disappeared, one of them stuck around. It was the one announcing that the infinite cycle had been removed. Opening the message reveals a new quest: take down the 3 great bosses from the dungeons that have appeared. Just then, he hears someone calling for him from outside his room. Answering the door, he finds the doorman, who says some people from the Ares Guild are there to see him. Kim tells him he's not interested, but the doorman is persistent. Realizing they won't stop bothering him until he makes his position crystal clear, he follows the guard to where the recruiter is waiting. There, on the sofa, sits a man in a suit with a guard standing behind him. Kim gets straight to the point, saying he's already made it abundantly clear he won't be joining any guild. The man introduces himself as Byung-ho Kang, the HR guy for the Ares Guild. Byung-ho asks if Kim really thinks he can level up as a hunter, without a guild's backing, adding that there will be no unnecessary complications if he joins Ares. Kim picks up on the thinly veiled threat, asking if they really rolled up to his place just to threaten him. The guard gets salty about Kim's attitude, but Byung-ho tells him to cool it and not do anything stupid. Kim says he's well aware of their guild's reputation, calling them a bunch of scumbags who monopolize half the dungeons in Korea. From talking with his old crew, Kim learned that you need a special permit just to enter a dungeon. The Ares Guild controls a whopping 66% of all the E country's dungeons, from the A ranks, perfect for farming, down to the D ranks, suitable for rookies. This basically leaves everyone with 2 choices. Either cough up the cash for their overpriced permits or join the guild. The guard slams the table to intimidate Kim, suggesting he reconsiders the offer and hinting they could make him disappear if he doesn't cooperate. The guard then hurls the table against the wall, flexing his rank. As a hunter, he asks if Kim honestly thinks he stands a chance. With a smirk, Kim continues to poke the bear, lounging casually on the sofa. Kim gets up and slides his slipper off, announcing he's about to teach them some manners. The enraged guard charges at Kim, but a single slipper slap to the face sends him flying into the wall. Bong-ho stares in shock at his partner while Kim calmly strolls toward him. Before Kim gets close, Bong-ho thinks that while Kim might have potential, he's just a big fish in a small pond. The first guard, now part of the wall decor, is completely knocked out, and Bong-ho is floored by what just happened. Bong-ho can't figure out how Kim is so strong without even using magic. Meanwhile, Kim walks over, asking if he knows the one thing he hates most. Cornered against the wall, Bong-ho begins to panic as Kim continues talking. The thing Kim hates most is when people throw empty threats his way. With a wicked smile, Kim decks Bong-ho. Later that night, Kim is at his friend's place spilling the tea on what happened. He admits he might have gone a little overboard and that the Ares Guild is relentless with payback, but Kim isn't sweating them one bit. Si-hyun keeps explaining that no one messes with Ares because they hold grudges, blacklist people from other guilds, and even silence them permanently inside dungeons. Si-hyun admits what Kim did was pretty savage and offers him a spot in his guild, which Kim promptly turns down. Kim has a plan forming and asks if Si-hyun has heard of the Aderon Lab. For 12 years, Kim has been wondering why he was the only one who couldn't escape the tower. His questions are filled with anger and resentment. Who was the jerk responsible for this? Why was Kim trapped for 12 years? He figures if he can uncover these secrets, he'll find the one responsible, and then he can make them suffer just as he did. The Aderon Lab is a C-rank dungeon. Its boss is a mad scientist, a half-cyborg, obsessed with experimenting on others. It's known as a good spot for beginners to grind some levels. Si-hyun doubts they'll let Kim in since this dungeon is also under the Ares Guild's control. Annoyed, Kim asks if there aren't any laws to stop their monopoly, but Si-hyun explains the government is too busy to handle hunter-related issues. Si-hyun adds that they can get away with killing people in dungeons because the police can't investigate inside ruling such cases as accidental deaths. The protagonist decides he'll just crash the party, but Si-hyun immediately shoots the idea down, explaining they have the place under 24/7 surveillance. Kim decides to face them head-on, earning another warning that doing so will make the entire guild his enemy. Remembering what he did to the last two members, Kim says it's a bit late to start worrying about that. At the Ares Guild headquarters, the leadership is discussing expansion into China, Russia, and Japan. Alright, buckle up because this story is about to get wild. So Sun Woo-hyuk, a top-tier S-rank hunter, is totally nonchalant about the guild's expansion. He's like, who cares how long it takes to go global? They're already crushing the competition anyway. He makes an analogy. When you're running from a dungeon boss, you don't have to outrun the boss, just the guy next to you. Classic right. Just then, one of his subordinates arrives with a status report on Kim. They use some specialized tech to review his performance in the tutorial, and the guildmaster is impressed, remarking, wow, this guy has some serious power. But when he finds out they didn't recruit him, he's like, hey, we're better off without him. But let's be real, having someone like Kim would be a massive win for the guild. He'd be tearing through labyrinths and dungeons like a total pro. But he might just make a play for the director's chair. So the boss is like, forget recruiting him, let's just teach him a lesson. As he's heading out, this red-haired dude with a man bun stops him, saying there's some drama over at the Aderon Lab. Meanwhile, in the Chimambo Mountains, a girl wants to hunt in the dungeon, but the guards are all, no ticket, no entry. Try the free labyrinth instead. One guard's being a total creep, asking for her number in exchange for letting her in. Enter our hero Kim. The guard says, no bathrooms here, dude. Go find a bush. But Kim's just like, nah, I'm heading into the dungeon. The guard thinks it's a joke because it's incredibly dangerous. Kim, having had enough, takes off his sandal, and the guards are like, what the heck? Kim calls him over. And when one tries to shoo him away, bam, a sandal to the face sends him flying. The other guard is just like, what just happened? And Kim's like, hand over your shoes or you'll end up just like your buddy. Now rocking some fancy shoes that cost a fortune for their weight reduction magic, Kim's like, these are comfy. He even gives his sandals back, saying he's not a bad guy. The girl bounces, and the guards are left staring at the wreckage of the sandal. Back at the Soul Guild, HQ Yonglo is freaking out at Hyun for letting Kim just leave. Hyun's like, chill out, Kim's unstoppable. All I could do was warn him about the Ares Guild. They recall how Kim is usually chill, but he turns into a total beast if you mess with him. Kim's checking out his new kicks, and his pals are like, don't sweat it. After chatting about the Ares Guild, Kim asks about his status leaving. Yong completely shook. Inside the dungeon, Aderon is hunting for test subjects while a group of adventurers spies on him. They're debating what to do since the Ares Guild doesn't care about the boss because he's not profitable. They figure they might as well take him on themselves, but the young woman doubts their skills. They did their homework and found out the boss has high defense but weak attacks. If they can wear him down, they might just win. Just as they're gearing up for battle, they spot a guy casually strolling up to the boss. They're all thinking, who is this brave soul? Flashback to 12 years ago, Kim's pals learned about his tough childhood in an orphanage, where he was told to keep his head down and never show he was parentless. After his parents passed away, his cousin dumped him at an orphanage and stole his inheritance. Maybe because he lost his trust in people. Even though he's chill most of the time, if anyone tries to boss him around, Kim gets this wicked grudge that he just can't hide. The giant half-cyborg monster is like, what should I try out first? All while making sparks fly with its blades. The main dude tells the monster to chill, but the boss just cracks up, wondering why he should even bother stopping. With just one epic kick, our guy wrecks the boss's body, leaving everyone totally mind-blown. He checks his status window again. One mission's down, and the next one is in the forest village. The adventurer squad spots him. He's the hot topic in the hunter community, the advanced player. In the Ares Guild's basement, the guild master's second-in-command is chatting with Chang Mong, the guild's management chief. He shows off the main character's evaluation, leaving Mayong stunned that a newbie, fresh out of the tutorial, managed to get 2 rank B attributes. Mayong thinks to himself, this guy's practically a monster, and he asks his associate if they want him to handle the situation. They already know the protagonist crashed one of their dungeons and joke about how embarrassing it must have been for the director. If the protagonist is really that strong, Mayong realizes he might not be able to simply teach him a lesson. He might actually have to eliminate him. But he plans to keep it on the down low since his boss is preoccupied with matters in China. The situation there is chaotic because 2 years ago, when the PO Guild emerged, they swiftly took control of half the dungeons in China. The guild leader, who is the mastermind behind it all, has only been out of the tower for 4 years, and all the top members are renowned for their monstrous abilities. But the most shocking part is that the guild leader's identity, an S-rank hunter, is a complete mystery. Since they're preoccupied with the situation in China, they decide not to worry too much about the protagonist for now. Meanwhile, the protagonist is snapping pictures, completely blown away by how much technology has advanced, taking a photo of his friend and marveling that he can play games on his phone. He mentions that the dungeon he's targeting is run by his friend's guild, but the final boss is currently missing in action. A fired-up Kim asks why, and the protagonist explains that the boss was defeated a few weeks ago, noting that the real-world system is different from the towers. In the tower, monsters respawn within a day, but in the real world, things work differently. Regular monsters regenerate constantly, but the boss monster takes a while to reappear. The protagonist is worried he'll have to wait a whole month to challenge it, but he relaxes upon hearing it will only be 2 or 3 days until it respawns. His friend asks when he's going to register his rank with the hunter association, because with a high rank, he'll land some awesome sponsorship deals and a lot of cash. The mention of money gets the protagonist excited, and when he asks how much he could potentially earn, his friend breaks it down for him. Rank B hunters can pull in up to 1.3 million, while higher ranks make significantly more. He himself makes 7 million. The next day, Hyonu heads to the Hunter Association with Si-hyun. The receptionist asks if Hyonu is there to register and requests his name. As soon as he learns Hyonu is the guy who vanished. For 12 years, he recalls that someone named Victor was looking for him. Thinking Hyonu seems a bit arrogant for a rookie, he assumes his evaluation will be rank B at the absolute most. He hands Hyonu a small box, the Eye of Truth. It's designed to measure his status grade and display it on the nearby hologram. When Hyonu holds the box and the hologram appears, the receptionist's jaw hits the floor at the stats displayed. He shouts that it makes absolutely no sense for Hyonu to possess those kinds of stats. And just like that, news about Hyonu starts blowing up online. People online are buzzing about how, with the exception of magic, all his stats are rank A, something completely unheard of. On the drive back, Hyonu is astonished by how quickly news travels on the internet. Si-hyun says it was bound to happen because on top of his incredible stats, he also caused a commotion in the Ares Guild's dungeon. Si-hyun warns that the Ares Guild has probably gathered all the details on Hyonu by now, and after today's public reveal, they definitely won't just sit back and do nothing. While warning the protagonist to be careful, Si-hyun is casually playing a game on his phone. He suddenly cracks up and shows Hyonu the phone. On the game's loading screen is a hunter, striking a ridiculous pose complete with over-the-top cheesy effects. With a deadpan expression, Si-hyun says, "That's me." His reveal leaves the two of them in a moment of awkward silence inside the car. The protagonist is like, "Hey Si-hyun, how are you always so laid back when other guild masters are constantly swamped with work?" Si-hyun's like, "Sorry dude, I'm busy too. I just took the day off to help you out." But our protagonist isn't falling for it. Back at the Ares Guild's underground base, Mayong and Cheonggong are completely blown away by the protagonist's power. Mayong's all, "No worries, I've got Cheonggong here, the hunter who's on the verge of hitting S rank in China." Meanwhile, in the forest village, Honu and Shihun are just chilling, waiting for the boss to respawn. As they venture deeper into the forest, a couple of guys are watching them with sinister grins from just a few meters away. The protagonist asks, "So who's this guy tagging along with us?" Shihun explains, "He's just here to help us gather some materials." The protagonist is confused, but Si-hyun clarifies, "The boss drops materials worth 20 to 35 million won." Shocked, the protagonist asks, "What in the world do people even do with this stuff?" Si-hyun scoffs, "Well, someone dressed like you wouldn't understand, but they're for crafting weapons and armor." The helper chimes in, "Do you mind if I record this raid?" Apparently streaming is a gold mine, and Hyonu, the top mercenary, wants an 80% cut of the profits. They continue trekking deeper into the forest where Chi hands the protagonist a map, warning him that it becomes a maze further in. Our protagonist, who's completely clueless when it comes to maps, just tosses it aside and heads for a massive tree. He tells the helper to get a good angle as he gears up to punch it. His punch is so powerful it literally clears a path straight to the boss, a two-headed ogre. The helper is absolutely floored by the protagonist's skills, filming every second as he follows him to the boss. With a single leap, the protagonist is at the boss's eye level, effortlessly dodging its attacks and climbing onto its shoulder. He lands a powerful kick that brings it down, then climbs on top of the beast under the moonlight. In a matter of seconds, the protagonist single-handedly defeats the dungeon boss. The helper is stoked, completely certain his video is going to go viral, while the guys hiding in the trees are seen grinning wickedly. It turns out to be Qionggang, who's been scouting the protagonist's skills. He realizes our hero is the real deal, an advanced player with insane stats. He didn't even need to use magic or special skills, but Qionggang believes he's already figured out a way to defeat him. The plan is to strike tomorrow when he enters the swamp. The protagonist, already there, gets a strange feeling just as his phone buzzes. It's Sioen, worried about him. He keeps moving forward unfazed. He's not scared of the Ares Guild or anything else because he's an absolute, clears throat, beast. Just yesterday, Sioen had asked why he was heading into Ares territory, and he simply said he had business to take care of. She pressed for details, but he kept it vague. She wondered if he was just looking to pick a fight with Ares, and he admitted that was part of the reason. Sioen sighed. She knew he was capable, but was still worried, asking him to at least try to avoid any guild members. Since the swamp is a rank A dungeon, the Ares Guild is likely waiting to invade the moment the boss respawns. The protagonist nods along to her advice, but he has absolutely no intention of following it. Sure enough, inside the dungeon, he runs into a guild member who immediately threatens him with a knife. The guy is yelling, trying to intimidate him, while the protagonist just calmly recalls his friend's words of caution. Seeing the guy getting ready to attack, the protagonist thinks to himself, do these guys ever learn they disrespect me and then they get wrecked? Already bored with the situation, the protagonist mutters that it's always the same old story, which ticks off the guy who then charges at him. An explosion erupts behind him as the protagonist casually strolls away. As he's walking across the swamp's squishy ground, a monster lurking in the water spots him and immediately charges. Looming in front of him is a massive 20-meter-long crocodile. Even our protagonist is impressed by its sheer size. Remembering his friend's tips, he knows its hide is incredibly tough, and its teeth are worth a fortune. The protagonist flashes a wicked grin and charges the boss, landing a solid blow. He boasts about taking it down quickly and grabbing all the loot, but the monster makes a run for it. The protagonist grabs both of its tails, stopping it from diving into the water. As it spun wildly through the air, the desperate monster hears him mention a move called the Giant Swing. He yeets it into a mountain, but plot twist, the croc is one tough cookie and comes back for round 2. Sensing the boss's murderous intent, our main dude is just like, you want to get smacked around again? Meanwhile, Qionggang is just chilling on the sidelines watching the show. The croc lunges, and Hyonu gets ready to finish it off. But then bam, shiny chains suddenly snag his legs. Qionggang, sneaky as ever, ambushes Hyonu, declaring it's game over as the boss moves in for a bite. Hyonu is quick on his feet, dodging the boss's bite. But then he spots the bright red chains on his legs. Totally baffled, he's like, what the heck? And Qionggang, perched on a rock, smirks. Magic chains, dude. Perfect for someone with zero magic. Still on the ground, our main guy is just like, who even are you, bro? Qionggang hops down, explaining he's from the Ares Guild and was sent to handle Hyonu personally. Our main guy asks, so you're a guild hitman? And Qionggang is just like, bingo. Qionggang admits he's impressed by Hyonu's raw power, tossing crocodiles around like it's nothing. He knows Hyonu is strong, but with these chains he's completely stuck. Hyonu struggles to break free, but nope, those chains aren't budging an inch. Qionggang smirks. These aren't just any chains, they're magic, so you need magic to break them. This whole setup is tailor-made for you, Hyonu. He sneers, fresh out of the tower with zero magic skills. Hyonu just thinks, am I really in deep trouble? Hyonu's calm demeanor is stressing Qionggang out, who mutters, everyone tries to act cool when they're caught off guard. But our main guy keeps playing it cool, which only ticks Qionggang off even more. Qionggang whips out his sword, ready to strike Hyonu down. The moment his sword makes contact, Qionggang triggers a massive explosion. Qionggang thinks he's won, but when the smoke clears, Hyonu is just chilling there, asking if something was supposed to happen. Qiongang's jaw drops. His attack did zilch to Hyonu. Qionggang tries to strike again, but gets a surprise punch that sends him flying. Hyonu casually strolls over, remarking, you should have chained my whole body. The guy's completely baffled, asking how any of this is possible. The chains vanish, and Hayonu easily snaps the tree he was tied to, picking it up like a club. Since Chonggong is an assassin, he knows exactly what's coming next. Cue the crocodile. Hayonu launches Chonggong right at the croc, taking them both out instantly. A mission complete alert pops up announcing that his status window is getting an upgrade. Meanwhile, back at the Ares Guild, Mong finds out that Chonggong got absolutely wrecked by our main dude. There were no remains to recover. Chonggong was a beast, with 2 S-rank stats and 7 different abilities, and yet Hayonu still beat him. Mong is stressed out, wondering how to handle Hayonu now. Back at home, Hayonu's lounging on the couch deep in thought. He lets out a sigh, then checks his status window. Some new stuff has been added. Hayonu now has a status scan ability, and a system invitation to become a temporary guardian. Hayonu isn't sure what's going on, but he's stoked that something is finally different. He thought he would finish the mission and get some intel on the tower, but instead, he got an invitation that expires in 2 hours. Sia comes home and asks if Hayonu has eaten yet. Hayonu uses this as a chance to test his new ability. With Status Scan, he can check other people's stats, but since it's a low level, the information is pretty limited. Annoyed, Hayonu grumbles that the new skill is pretty much useless, leading Xiun to believe it's all about him. Lounging on the couch, Hayonu waits for the system update to get the details on the tower. Right, as the clock strikes midnight, everything goes pitch black, and Hayonu is suddenly teleported into a room. Inside, a woman sits waiting for him at a table. With a completely deadpan expression, she introduces herself as his assistant A. She explains that as long as Hayonu is alive, they'll be seeing a lot of each other. Our main guy is totally hyped, thinking he's finally going to get some answers like why he was trapped in the tower in the first place. Face to face with A, Hayonu waits for her to spill the tea. He asks for a full explanation, but she informs him that she only responds to direct questions. For his first question, Hayonu asks who trapped him in the tutorial tower, but she can't answer because his clearance level's too low. Hayonu's frustrated, realizing he'll have to level up his scan ability to get the answers he wants. He keeps firing off questions, but she completely ignores him, stressing him out so much he gives her a light flick on the forehead. Turns out she has no idea who she is or why she brought him there, leaving her with 0 answers for him. He offers up one small tidbit of information. Guardians are the ones who defend. It's as simple as that. Taking a deep breath, Yonu gives up for now and asks what he actually needs to know. She breaks it down for him. Since Hayonu is currently just a temporary guardian, he'll get the full story once he becomes an official one. So Hayonu's like, how do I become an official guardian? She tells him, in 5 days, a rift is going to open up right where you live. Deep inside it, there's a key that will raise your scan level. Grab it and boom, you're an official guardian. Heading home, Hayonu is lost in thought, determined to do whatever it takes to get the 411. The next day, Hayonu meets with the guildmasters and drops the bombshell that a rift is about to appear. Everyone's jaws hit the floor because a rift means absolute chaos is on its way. Over at the Ares Guild HQ, the director is so furious about one of his top guys getting wrecked that he slams his fist on the table. He's absolutely raging, ordering them to spare no expense to get payback. The director goes and hires a mercenary who's even stronger than the last one. His one goal is to get Hayonu out of the picture for good. Once Hayonu is taken care of, the director plans to focus on the P Guild, whose members are being picked off by a mysterious masked squad. Then our hero's eyes are glued to a ring, a tiny little thing from a labyrinth that's worth over $1.5 million. Our protagonist is curious and asks about the difference between labyrinths and dungeons. They explain that labyrinths are where you can find incredible artifacts just like this ring. Meanwhile, dungeons mostly just have monster drops and magic stones. This ring, on the other hand, has special enchantments just like an item from a video game. Using his skills, Hayonu discovers the ring is a Class A item with a pyrokinesis ability, but his own skill level isn't high enough to reveal any more details. Feeling like his skills are kind of meh, Hayonu figures that once he's finished with his current mission, he should definitely check out a labyrinth. He remembers his conversation with A and asks the guildmasters if they know what a rift is, immediately putting everyone on high alert. Basically, a rift is a tear in reality where the ground splits open and monsters come pouring out. Anyone who's ever witnessed one calls it the gates of hell. The fact that A was so casual about it made our hero think it was no big deal, and now he's pretty ticked off about being misled. Hyonu asks, "So what would happen if a rift opened up in Korea?" Everyone goes quiet deep in thought. They know they could probably handle a low-level rift, but it would still cause massive destruction. Someone mutters that while some guilds would try to fight it, the Ares Guild would probably just send in a few nobodies and then claim all the credit for saving the day. Our hero just looks down at his plate and tells everyone to eat up and get some rest for the tough days ahead, leaving them all completely bewildered. A few days later, a minor tremor ripples through the airport. The shaking intensifies, cracking the ground as a crimson rift tears open, expanding to a massive size. Meanwhile, in a distant castle, a cloaked figure approaches a large round table. He announces, "The 9th class has awakened." The man at the table inquires if the awakening is complete. The cloaked figure replies, "Not yet, but it's imminent. The timing couldn't be better." A demonic-looking man has his eyes on Hyonu, eager to see what he's capable of. Back at the airport, panic erupts as people react to the violent tremors. While some manage to stay on their feet, others are thrown to their knees. A news helicopter circles above, broadcasting warnings for everyone to evacuate the area due to the rift as the airport goes into lockdown. Hunters quickly arrive on the scene, but monsters are already pouring out, sparking an all-out battle between humans and beasts. The monster onslaught is relentless, leaving some people paralyzed with fear. However, one team member uses their ability to ensnare a group of monsters, creating an opening for the others to attack. The veteran hunter shouts at a rookie, telling him to get back on his feet and fight. Despite defeating numerous monsters, the hunter realizes the situation is only getting worse. There's no sign of reinforcements, and for every monster they defeat, more swarm in to take its place. Their main objective is to strike at the rift's origin point. Suddenly he hears a sound and turns to see a gigantic skeleton approaching. It's a rank A monster, a sight that instantly crushes the spirits of the fighters. Just as the skeleton is about to attack, the veteran hunter yells for everyone to retreat while he moves to block the blow. Despite his defensive stance, the impact is so powerful that it sends him flying and he crash lands onto a nearby car. That had to hurt. The skeleton looms over him, ready to deliver the final blow, when suddenly Hyonu appears. With his hands casually in his pockets, he kicks the skeleton's head clean off. Talk about the ultimate casual flex. Everyone recognizes him instantly. Hyonu's all-black attire is the unmistakable mark of the high-level player from the news. Hyonu glances at the skeleton's remains and then checks his status window, realizing the key he needs is located deeper inside the airport. The onlookers are in awe, muttering, "He just took out a skeleton with a single kick." But their moment of shock is cut short as a horde of monsters takes advantage of the distraction and attacks. Hyonu sighs. "Guess I should help out until reinforcements arrive." He effortlessly picks up the giant skeleton's club, gives it a few impressive spins, and launches it into the crowd of monsters, wiping out a huge swath of them. The crowd watches, their hope renewed, believing Honu can handle everything. But then comes the plot twist. He just leaves, telling them to hold on until help gets there. The hunters fight relentlessly, their exhaustion growing as the monster waves continue. The general rallies them, shouting, "If we fall back now, it's over for everyone." Just as the general is ambushed, a single sword slash takes down the attacking monsters. It's the leader of the Soul Guild arriving just in time. Clad in samurai-like armor and wielding a sword, he and his guild members are ready for battle. A sound from a nearby pile of wrecked cars catches his attention, and a moment later a dead monster falls to the ground beside them. Soon arrives with her guild, and Shikwan's group appears right after. With all the major guilds assembled, the general feels a wave of relief. So Yan then asks, "Where is Honu? He should have been the first one here. He just jumped straight into the rift." Someone explains, which doesn't surprise his friends at all, given his impatience. With their forces combined, the guilds launch a full-scale counterattack against the monster horde. Xion activates his shield and leads the charge, plowing through a group of monsters. Sehyun moves like a ninja, swiftly cutting down monsters with precise strikes. Meanwhile, Seo unleashes powerful lightning magic, obliterating monsters with crackling spheres of energy. Hyonu's checking out the abyss. AV says he needs to hit rock bottom. He spots a path carved out by monsters and finds a car nearby. An idea begins to form. He rips the car doors off to use his shields and dives straight into the monster horde. A goblin tries to warn its buddies, but it's too late. The real beast has arrived, and they're all completely freaking out. Hyonu charges in like a runaway buffalo, sending monsters flying everywhere. Some of them tumble back down into the abyss, and he knows he must be getting close to the bottom. He ditches the car doors and takes a leap of faith into the chasm, landing on a massive pile of monsters. At the very bottom of the rift, a red monster approaches, looking like a total boss with crystals covering its body. These crimson climbers have the key that Hyonu needs. Hyonu charges forward, throwing a punch, but the monster easily dodges and counters, sending him flying. He's in total shock with no time to think before the monster is right back on top of him. Hayonu dodges counters with a kick and a punch and manages to knock the monster down. The monster starts babbling something while pointing at Hayonu, but he doesn't get it and just keeps attacking. The monster blocks his punch with a single hand, then counterattacks with lightning speed. Hayonu's struggling big time. After seeing a cut on his stomach, he wonders if it's finally time to use that special ability. Getting to his feet, he lets the monster know that it's in for a world of hurt now. The monster clearly doesn't get it, so Hayonu strikes a fighting pose, giving off some serious martial artist vibes. Back in his tower days, Hayonu remembered all those martial arts stories where people escape their trials right after achieving enlightenment. He knew it was just stuff you see in movies, but he kept on training, hoping enlightenment would be his ticket out of the tower. At first, he just copied moves he saw in TV shows, but it was completely pointless. His punches did absolutely zilch against the monsters. Hayonu thought it was all a huge waste of time until boom, he straight up yeeted a monster's head clean off with a single punch. All the stats he'd earned from clearing the tower a gazillion times had turned his fake-out martial arts into the real deal. Hayonu did his best to forget those super cringe early days. While he's busy prepping his special move, the monster launches a surprise attack. Even with a punch flying right at his face, our dude stays totally chill and unleashes Emperor's Fury, smashing the monster's head to pieces. The punch is so incredibly epic, it blasts a massive hole through the solid rock wall nearby. Seeing the destruction, he's just glad no one was around to witness that. And he admits shouting out your move names is definitely kind of cringe. He snags the key, which updates his mission. In 3 days, he's scheduled to meet Av again, hoping she'll finally have some real answers for him. Just then, he spots a tiny drone buzzing quietly overhead. That same footage is playing on a massive screen at the Ares Guild headquarters, where they are completely shook by his raw power. The chief says in disbelief, "Is he really just an A rank?" His assistant replies, "Yep, those are his official hunter stats." The chief mutters to himself, "That looked more like the power of an S ranker." And he did it all with no magic and no gear, just a simple tracksuit. The guy pulled off some truly insane feats. The chief asks his team if they gathered all the intel. He believes brute force has its limits, and orders them to fully prepare to take Hayonu down. The next day at the Hunter Association, reporters are swarming the place, snapping pictures of the guild leaders and our hero. They're all getting major props for successfully dealing with the rift. Everyone else is dressed to the nines in suits, but our guy, of course, is rocking his signature sportswear. Meanwhile, his raid assistant is live streaming the ceremony and is totally stoked about the huge number of viewers tuning in. The comments are absolutely flooding in as he walks up to receive his award. A stern, military-looking man eyes him up and down and asks if he needs a change of clothes, but he just gets a cheeky reply that leaves him super annoyed. After snagging all his awards, he casually asks if he can bounce. But before anyone can even answer, he's already out of there. His friends don't even seem surprised anymore. He's all about breaking the mold. The scene then cuts to the Po Guild's castle over in China. A woman is relaxing in a hot tub, watching a broadcast of Hayonu's incredible fight against the Crimson Monster. Model. She watches his technique, looks startled, then hops out and demands to know his name. Her assistant informs her that he's Honu, brand new from the tutorial. She immediately orders a full background check on him. Just as the assistant agrees, a man in a white kimono walks in. He greets her with news about the Wheon Guild's recent move. Without even looking at him, she asks for the details. It turns out they managed to secure all the southern dungeons, but one of their executives was captured by the Ares Guild. While drying off, she casually remarks that if an executive got caught by a bunch of newbies, he doesn't deserve to be in their guild anyway. Tying up her hair, she comments on how pathetic it is that they can't completely dominate all the other guilds in their own territory. Staring at the screen with a fiery gaze, she declares it's a small price to pay to uphold their vow. Meanwhile, back in Korea, Seoyeon asks if he understands just how famous he's become. He's a public figure now, but he doesn't seem to grasp the challenges that come with it. Online people are posting news and trolling him for showing up to the award ceremony in casual clothes and sandals, only to bolt immediately after. Hayonu couldn't care less. He figures he'll never see those people again anyway, and he's just going to live life his own way, much to his friends' concern. He suddenly stands up and says he has to bounce. When his friends ask where he's going, he tells them he has a date, leaving everyone completely stunned. After he leaves, his friends are all clearly worried about him. Even though he just got out of the tower, he's already made a ton of enemies. One of them says not to worry, he's strong, and it's not like he's going around actively causing trouble. He heads to a quiet alley. As he waits for the invitation timer to run out, a bright light envelops him and he finds himself back in AB's room. He immediately asks if the status scan has leveled up. A B tells him that after his fight with the Crimson Demon, it went from a minor rank to a lower rank, an update he's not exactly thrilled about. AB is like, hey, relax, I'm just the messenger here, explaining that the information he can access is still basically the same, which only makes him more annoyed. But now that he's a legitimate guardian, she spills the beans about the tasks he needs to complete. Once he accomplishes them, he'll be able to find out whatever he wants. Now that Honu is a guardian, his main job is to stop all the climbers trying to ascend the tower. He's like, I was stuck in that tower for 12 years and I never saw a single one. But AB clarifies, no, not the tutorial tower. I'm talking about the main tower with 12 layers. Earth is just one of those layers. Hanu's job is to guard the 9th layer, which happens to be Earth. All Hayanu wanted was to find out who trapped him in the tower, and now he's suddenly been promoted to Earth's personal bodyguard. This is all a bit much for a guy who was just looking forward to some downtime. A warns him that if he fails to stop the climbers, the 9th layer will be destroyed, meaning it's game over for him and all his friends. Hyonu is fuming that he has zero choice in the matter and is just being forced to follow orders. A tries to smooth things over by saying it's not exactly like that, but her lack of a solid explanation only makes him more ticked off. The supposed big boss of this new system realizes she's being too soft on Hayanu. She calls out his name, adopting a more serious tone. But Hanu just fires back with an even more serious tone, making her realize this approach is a total flop. She quickly switches gears, explaining that they chose Hayanu as a guardian for his own benefit. Besides, there are rewards involved. The more climbers he takes down, the more goodies he'll receive. Hayanu immediately calms down, asking what scan level he needs to reach to find out about the jerks who created the tower and trapped him inside. A repeats that his scan level needs to be higher before he can access that information. Hayanu asks how many climbers he needs to defeat to level up, but AB explains there's no set number since the climbers have different ranks too. To get the information he wants, Hayanu will need to defeat 5 high-ranking climbers. For context, the Crimson Demon he fought was probably a low-ranking one, a low-level climber, so he's finally getting how the system works. Back at his place, Hayonu is in a library checking his status window. The only new feature is an alert for when another climber appears. This whole situation with Earth being trapped in a tower and him being the designated hero is seriously confusing. So to keep things simple, Hayonu decides to just beat up monsters until he can figure out who trapped him in the tower. While he's thinking this over, he gets a call from Seo Yan. She tells him, "Dude, you are in major trouble. Check the news ASAP." Hayonu turns on the TV to find the host discussing the murder he supposedly committed on an Ares Guild member. He heads over to Seo and Han's place. Their phones are blowing up, but Hyonu is just chilling on the couch. Seo explains that Hyonu was already a hot topic after clearing the tutorial tower. After soloing the rift, his fame exploded, but now with murder accusations, other countries might start paying close attention to him. Hyonu just asks, what's with all the panic? Seo Yan, fuming, asks how they could possibly not be worried. He looks at her feeling a strange sense of familiarity. It feels like being nagged by a wife, which is odd since he's never been married or even had a girlfriend. So he bluntly asks if Xion has a crush on him. She takes a deep breath but fails to contain her anger as her lightning powers start to spark. And she threatens, "You think I'm joking, say one more stupid thing and you're fried." Si-Hyun walks in, showing them his phone. It's flooded with missed calls from reporters, and Hyonu is trending #1 on Twitter. Sewon calmly says, "This isn't the first time something like this has happened." Then Si-Hyun starts reading some of the articles out loud. The articles aren't just about Hyonu, they're also trying to slander the other guilds, but Hyonu remains completely unfazed, blowing his friends' minds with how chill he is. Sewon suggests just keeping his phone off, and mentions that the press conference starts in 30 minutes. The other two, who had no idea about the conference, ask if he even has a plan. They're imagining Hyonu will fight all the journalists and declare war on the Ares Guild. Hyonu is disappointed they think so little of him, while Shoen just laughs at the ridiculous situation. Meanwhile, at the Ares Guild, the director asks, "Is everything proceeding as planned?" His subordinate replies, "Yes," and gives him the full scoop. Public opinion is a complete mess, so it'll be nearly impossible for our hero to get out of this. The director grins, thinking, the first strike is critical. Since a peaceful resolution is impossible, I'll outmaneuver Hyonu and eliminate him for good. At the press conference, reporters are buzzing with questions asking if Hyonu really attacked the Ares Guild. Our hero sees all the cameras and thinks, I have no idea how these things work, so I'll just have to wing it. Hyonu picks a reporter who asks him how he's feeling about the situation. He simply replies, "It sucks." Another reporter asks, "Did you really kill a member of the Ares Guild?" And Hyonu coolly replies, "Yep," leaving everyone's jaws on the floor. He adds, "I have no idea why the Ares Guild is freaking out. I just turned down their offer once and they completely lost it. Then they play the footage of his confrontation with the assassin. Everyone is shocked by this plot twist, their eyes glued to the screen as the entire conversation with the assassins is played for all to hear. When asked where it was filmed, Hyunwoo says, "The swamp dungeon where I was hunting the boss monster." People are skeptical, suggesting the video could be faked, but Hyunwoo is prepared for this. He pulls out a phone, the assassin's phone. He admits he doesn't know what's on it since it's locked, but says they'll find out at the police station. He adds that as a new climber fresh from the tower, all he could do was defend himself. Hyunwoo also clarifies that the assassin got eaten by a giant crocodile that ambushed them. Reporters are frantically scribbling notes, while others are already posting about it online. Hyunwoo leaves the press conference annoyed by the spectacle, but thanks to him, the tables have completely turned. Hyunwoo, once the accused, is now hailed as a hero, while the Ares Guild is being exposed for their lies. Back at the office, the director is fuming that Hyunwoo managed to flip the script with just a single audio file. He'd always thought Hyunwoo was all brawn and no brain, but it seems he was wrong. Still, he's not ready to give up just yet. Meanwhile, at a restaurant, Hyunwoo's friends are completely blown away by his cleverness. They can't believe he managed to get both a recording and the assassin's phone, but Hyunwoo clarifies that the phone didn't actually belong to the assassin. He just grabbed a random one nearby. His friends wonder if he's bluffing about other things, but Hyunwoo assures them the recording is 100% legit. Knowing the Ares Guild was shady from the start, he'd been recording all their interactions, never guessing it would turn into such a trump card. His friends start to worry that if the police get their hands on that phone, he'll be in hot water. But Hyunwoo isn't worried, saying, "Ares will come to me and I'll handle them my own way." The Ares Guild is based in the USA, making it one of the largest guilds in the world, with headquarters scattered across the globe. However, no country has as many high-level dungeons as South Korea. Whether they come at him with a bad plan or a shady deal, Hyunwoo is unfazed. After all, they have far more to lose than he does. Later that evening in a parking lot, Hyunwoo tells Sehyun to go home ahead of him, saying he needs to take a walk. He ducks into an alley and immediately senses that he's being followed. He expected this would happen, but not quite this soon. A man emerges from the shadows, informing him that someone is looking for him and that he should come along quietly. Hyunwoo's response is a simple no, but the man insists, "I wasn't asking." Hyunwoo finds their confidence amusing as he casually pulls a fresh vegetable from the ground. The assassin is annoyed by his nonchalant attitude and launches a magic attack, but Hyunwoo effortlessly blocks it with a head of cabbage. Seeing their leader get swatted away, the rest of the assassins rush him all at once, using every trick in their arsenal, but none of their attacks can even leave a scratch on him. Once the swarm of assassins is dealt with, Hyunwoo casually asks, "Are you done tickling me yet?" Then he gives them exactly what they deserve, leaving them all in a semi-vegetative state. The beatdown is so thorough that the last man standing starts begging for his life. Luckily for this guy, Hyunwoo happens to need a guide. So he agrees to spare him on one condition: the assassin has to take him to his boss. In an underground bunker on the outskirts of Gwangju, two assassins are chatting about how their guild has been secretly building this facility, mentioning some shady business. That's when his partner tells him to keep his mouth shut, reminding him that a place like this is the only reason hunters like them have a job. Their conversation eventually shifts to Hyunwoo, the guy who's been all over the news acting completely fearless. They scoff at him, remembering how Hyunwoo got totally wrecked by the rookies from Team 1. But just as one of them is boasting, a massive explosion erupts right in front of them. As the dust settles, Hyunwoo appears, casually dragging one of their unconscious comrades with him. Hyunwoo asks his guide if this is the right place, and not wanting to get pummeled, the assassin quickly confirms it is. The ones who are truly confused, however, are the two guards who just witnessed the explosion. Deeper inside the bunker, a guild executive and his security detail hear the commotion from the floor above. As the sounds draw nearer to the elevator, they brace themselves for whatever is about to come through those doors. Suddenly, the elevator doors are blasted open, sending their sniveling guide flying across the room and revealing our hero. Hyunwoo strolls in, calmly remarking, "This is a pretty strange place to own," and he wonders aloud if they really have enough cash to fund such a massive secret operation. The executive immediately draws his sword, demanding to know who this intruder is and how he found this place. Unfazed, Hyunwoo declares he's the Grim Reaper here to guide them all to the afterlife. The scene then shifts to a creepy warehouse where some rather questionable interrogation methods are being used on a pink-haired girl named Heo Seon-woo. Her interrogator asks if she's ready to talk, pointing out that it looks like her guild has abandoned her. The boss is certain that if she continues to resist, she's done for. He offers to grant her a wish in exchange for information and her weaknesses. But the girl isn't budging, and it's starting to get on his nerves. So Huxian orders his men to proceed. One of his underlings asks if the boss is sure because this time it's for keeps, but he no longer cares. He just wants to make her pay for her defiance. Following his orders, the masked man with the knife prepares to get back to work. But just in the nick of time before things can get ugly, the gate comes crashing down right on top of the executioner. And this time it's Huxian who's in shock because the very person he was hunting has just shown up on his doorstep. Inside, our hero spots a girl being held captive. He then jokes that it wasn't very cool of Huxian to bring a guest after extending him an invitation. Huxian is still baffled, demanding to know how Hyun is even there when he sent a whole team to eliminate him. Our main character pointedly explains that they've all been retired, just like the assassins behind him, leaving the boss with a choice to talk things out or get buried. The boss is still stunned, completely frozen in place. So his personal guard, one of the trained assassins, steps forward to handle the threat. But since Hyun already took care of an entire squad, one guy is hardly a challenge. After effortlessly taking down the guard, our hero jokes about why they're being so hostile to a guest, which is clearly starting to drive Huxian up the wall. His intel said the hero was rank A, but the hunters here were at least B+ with some A+ pros in the mix. Even the elite team he sent, who were nearly S rank, got completely wiped out. The report also mentioned that he soloed the dungeon boss. Even though Huxian wanted to dismiss it as a fluke, it's now painfully obvious that our protagonist is an S ranker and a top tier one at that. So even though he's also an S rank, he's not on the same level, meaning he could easily lose this fight. Finally, Hyun snaps him out of his daze by asking if he's gone deaf. Our hero asks if he can hurry up and decide whether he wants to talk this out or take a beating. Naturally, this irritates the boss, but he's no fool. He calms himself down and decides to talk, at least until he can gauge the full extent of the protagonist's power. He knows it would be foolish to act rashly. However, the moment they sit down at the table, Hyun asks if they can start with the payment. Since Huxian doesn't quite follow, our hero clarifies that he's referring to compensation for the damages caused by the Ares Guild. After all, not only did they send hunters after him, but they also had the audacity to spread false rumors, which our protagonist obviously isn't going to let slide without proper compensation. To break it down, our guy is demanding 10 billion won for damages, as well as the rights to several beginner-level dungeons. No big deal, right? The boss is surprisingly calm at first, but then it sinks in. He slams the table and yells, "This is extortion." Hyun calmly replies, "Not at all. It's a fair price for a company of this size." And honestly, the boss can't really argue with that logic. Sure, 10 billion won is hardly pocket change, but what's really making the boss sweat is the request for dungeon rights. He knows it means Hyun intends to monopolize all the new hunters for himself. Huxian is like, "Is there any point in arguing? I offered you cash before and you turned it down." But if it's prestige, he's after. The boss suggests, "Join the Ares Guild and you'll get all the support you could ever want." That way, instead of making an enemy of a major guild, he could have them as powerful allies. But the negotiations go south because Hyun is annoyed that other matters are being brought into his simple compensation deal. Plus, there's the small matter of the girl tied up right next to them who looks completely bewildered by the whole situation. Finally, Hyun declares, "I'll take these terms, but if you ever mess with me again, you will regret it." Huxian feels completely disrespected, but he circles the conversation back to, with the main point made and the choice laid out, either accept the terms or face an all-out battle. The boss's decision is obvious, no matter how much it pains him. Later that night, when our hero gets home, Sian is totally shocked, saying, "Whoa, dude." Especially since he's got this unconscious girl with him who's a total enigma. In a spooky, unfamiliar realm, a young man wanders through a ruined castle until he discovers the entrance to a tower, signaling the start of the 9th Layers challenge. Meanwhile, back in the real world, the deal is settled for 4 dungeons, 11 billion, and the girl he brought with him. A powerful hunter is present, but our hero confidently states, "I can handle whatever comes my way." Finally, Kian's curiosity gets the better of him, and he asks why the hero brought the girl. He explains that she's his insurance policy, and also because he's concerned about some personal matters he hasn't disclosed yet. Afterwards, Sian heads out to grab some loot since the dungeon bosses are about to respawn. Later, the hero examines the tattoo on the unconscious girl. No matter how long he stares, it bears a striking resemblance to the mask he was obsessed with, bringing to mind the first rule of the void. Finally, after opening the status window, the girl's name is revealed to be Hong Lin, and her stats are quite impressive. Still, she doesn't seem extraordinary, and since he can't view all her details, he's eager to get some answers once she wakes up. But before that can happen, an Urgent message pops up about a new climber on the 9th layer. The system asks, would you like to become a guardian when the timer reaches 0? Naturally, he's completely baffled. And to make matters worse, there are only 5 seconds left on the clock. So before he can even process it, he's pulled aside by the now conscious girl who calls his name and shouts that someone is approaching fast. Hyunwoo asks, who is this person? She tells him it's the next climber, leaving him to wonder who they are and when they will appear. The girl simply displays the system window, again earning a playful flick on the forehead from the hero, who realizes he would have been completely in the dark without her alert. She tries to explain again that it's not her fault, as his authority level is too low. He asks why she warned him if she didn't know who was coming, but the girl replies, it's not that simple. I need a favor. The situation is that this new climber is much stronger than the last one, and the guardian needs to be prepared. As for what he needs to do, the girl suggests that he awaken his mana to stand a chance. Hyunwoo starts getting excited about the prospect of facing a high-level opponent, but the girl warns that if he keeps that attitude, the world is doomed. Ultimately, she insists that the hero cannot win without using his mana. However, when he asks for more details, she admits she's clueless about the specifics of the unfolding crisis. The girl is in the dark about the details, but she knows a climber is defined by their unique skills and past achievements. To sum it up, Hyunwoo understands that an intermediate level climber is on their way, and he's in serious trouble without any intel. The girl then covers her head, yelling at him to stop picking on her. After all, from her perspective, treating an adorable girl so poorly is simply bad manners. But in a somber turn, the hero reveals that his parents died in a car crash when he was just a child, which prompts the girl to apologize for her thoughtlessness, saying she should have been offering him profound guidance instead. But hey, our hero is cool about it. And since there are no hard feelings, she starts to think that Hyunwoo might have a soft side after all. Meanwhile, inside the Orangild's skyscraper in Gwangjin-gu, someone yells, hey, what's going on? She's yelling that this so-called magic demonstration has to be a scam because she can't sense any mana at all. It turns out to be Hyunwoo, who's just venting his frustration because he feels he could be spending his time more productively. Siwon, however, is skeptical because she's never heard of a hunter succeeding without support from a mage. That's why, according to her notes, a mage like her is crucial for channeling mana. Just then, Sion pops up asking what she's up to. And since it's the 4th day, it seems like he's just there to give our hero a hard time. But as it turns out, he just came to deliver a message from the Hunters Association. Our hero has just established a guild, much to everyone's surprise. Now, with a few dungeons cleared, he just needs to focus on other objectives. The guild is named Guardian, and the person he brought back is still unconscious. Hyunwoo even jokes about whether she's become a vegetable, but thankfully that's not the case. Now it's just a waiting game. However, since she's been in this state for days without sensing any mana, she has no idea if her efforts are working. Sion suggests they find someone who can directly access the mana source, like Nakagawa Yasumi. Since our hero looks confused, Sion explains that she's the master of the Izanami Guild in Japan. She possesses a unique skill called Blood Flow, which allows her to control blood and enhance her stats. This is exactly why our hero is so excited. But traveling all the way to Japan just to meet her seems like a huge hassle. And even more annoying would be if our hero accidentally ruined the magic circle, which, to Sion's dismay, is exactly what happens. So Hyunwoo has to tell her to calm down, promising he'll fix it. Later, outside an intermediate-level lab in Sugamo, Tokyo, Japan. The master of the Izanami Guild, Nakagawa. Yasumi hears desperate cries for help as a strange dimensional rift creeps closer. She screams, telling her team to get out of the way, but they're not fast enough to evade the attack. Tragically, she's the only one who manages to dodge, leaving her as the sole survivor, visibly shaken by the devastation. But there's no time to grieve, because the culprit is slowly approaching with the blade drawn. Seeing this, Nakagawa nervously asks who he is. Then after she narrowly dodges his blade, the young man says he's willing to talk. He then theatrically wonders which of his many nicknames he should use. Some call him a climber, while others know him as the Destroyer, or the God of the Lightning Sky. But his true name is Chanma, and that's the last thing Nakagawa ever hears. Meanwhile, back in Korea, another urgent message reaches our hero. This one is about the climber's arrival in Japan. So he brushes off Sion's concerns and asks for a ride. On the way, the news broadcast shows the full extent of the chaos unfolding. And since he still hasn't mastered his magic, Hyunwoo is feeling the pressure. During the drive, Sion can't help but ask why our hero is heading to Japan. So as usual, he comes up with a vague excuse. But there's still the issue of his passport. Perhaps in his rush to confront the climber, Hyunwoo completely forgot he doesn't have one. Inside the Hunter Association's Japan branch conference room, a high-ranking official asks how Nakagawa is still alive, given that she was officially declared dead. She explains that she was revived thanks to a powerful artifact. In any case, the main question is whether Kaonma is really that overpowered. With the death of an S-rank hunter being announced, other hunters are hesitant to get involved. Since even Nakagawa couldn't defeat him, it's likely the others would fail as well. They need reinforcements, and with the local teams already engaged, all they can do is watch the situation escalate. That is until an unexpected face suddenly appears on the live broadcast. Our hero is already in the thick of the action despite the whole passport fiasco. Then facing Kaonma, he tries to open the status window, but it seems it doesn't work on climbers. Hayonu jokes that the enemy looks like a star from a historical drama, but the villain without any hesitation demands to know who our hero is, and attacks before getting an answer. Hayonu is on high, alert, because when the attack lands, the resulting shockwave tears through the surrounding buildings like a wrecking ball. Then, using his speed boost, Hayonu gets behind his opponent in an instant, landing a solid punch right on his guard. Grinning, Hayonu asks for the guy's name again, and since he dodged the blade, the swordsman finally spills it. Chianma keeps up the pressure, with another long-range move that barely misses our hero. Hayonu realizes the guy is fast, but not so fast that he can't keep up. At first glance, his moves seem basic, but they're actually a combination of several slashes at once. So it's clear to Hayonu that he needs to stop that sword swing since he has the advantage up close. Thinking quickly, our hero closes the distance, landing a punch right in the guy's gut. And he doesn't waste a second chasing him down to prevent any openings, but Chianma, even while bleeding, starts having a blast. Then bam, he unleashes an electric aura that's impossible to touch. Strolling over, Chiama asks who Hayonu is because compared to those on the lower floors, he's the strongest one yet. Back in the conference room, Sihyun is watching everything unfold, asking if the crevasse appeared at 2 o'clock. Nakagawa nods, feeling guilty for letting the hero go. When Hayonu got off the plane, he just took off, so Sihyun wonders why he was in such a hurry. But not being a fool, he figures Hayonu already knew about the event. Back to our hero's fight, he's dodging magic attacks left and right, nearly getting hit each time he asks what kind of skill this is. Chianma is offended, saying it's not just a skill and warns that he'll soon be toast thanks to his celestial sword. Not before explaining that he doesn't use those human tricks called skills. Seeing the situation, Hayonu knows he needs to dodge, but he's stumped on how, since moving away, gives the swordsman a long-range advantage. So he does the opposite, grabbing the guy's kimono and delivering a brutal headbutt. While Chianma is reeling from the pain, our hero switches it up, pulling off a martial arts move called Absolute King. Hayonu is hoping for a decisive win, but Chianma is back at 100% and ready to strike back. Before anything else, he admits the hero is interesting and strong. So he gives him props for being the first opponent worthy of a technique he's been itching to use, daring our hero to defend against it. Hayonu is blown away by the power and needs to sprint to close the distance. But that's precisely why Chianma is known as the lightning god. In a flash, the celestial sword in its lightning of condemnation mode strikes the ground. In the conference room, Sihyun is freaking out over this monster's insane power. Nothing is left in the attack's blast zone, but our hero was sharp grabbing the enemy just as he swung his sword. That lightning is still buzzing, running through his entire body. Even though it seems like the end, it's the very spark he needed to unlock his magic. The hero is still trying to process what's happening as he backs away. Chianma has lost his patience and wants to see if the hero's luck will hold up for a second round. Hayonu admits the guy is strong, especially since this technique is his own creation. Chianma is a character from a series of novels, and his story is about reaching the peak of magic and mastering mana. Finally, his opponent asks if the hero is going to keep fighting, but our hero replies, "This isn't going to scare me," which sounds pretty cocky to the swordsman. Hayonu knows he can't win by force alone, but wonders if a few more lightning strikes could change the game. When he was trapped in the tower, he practiced tons of martial arts, but the Kaon-mashing gong was always out of his reach. Those who mastered it were top tier, but Hayonu had zero experience with it. The techniques he tried to copy from the novels were just cheap imitations. But all that frustration has paid off now because in just 10 seconds, Chianma has been a better teacher than anyone else. Not quite grasping the situation, the martial artist launches another attack. But this time he's the one in for a shock because his attack is completely nullified and copied by the hero perfectly, who then flexes all his new skills on the opponent, showing off everything he just learned. First, Hayonu gathered all his magical power into one epic point and then boom, made it explode. The technique brewing behind him, the one making the martial artist sweat, was actually his own move. Then out of all the cool attack moves, the hero picked the divine kick of extreme destruction, which caused massive chaos, even smacking a transmission drone out of the sky. And so after just this one epic attack, a message popped up giving props to the Guardian for beating the climber Chienma. A few minutes after the climber got wrecked at P Castle, a girl chilling on her throne watches the hero's fight recap on a big screen. This was Miryong, and what blew her mind wasn't the win, but that it was her master out there. Flashback to the tutorial tower days. The girl was struggling big time against some nasty monsters. She was about to throw in the towel, totally out of hope and energy. But then in her darkest hour, her master swooped in, taking down all those baddies, the one who schooled her in martial arts and the path of awesomeness. That was her master, Kim Hyonu. Finally, she asks about the last area and hears there's something to the east in the Ween Guild's dungeon. If they snagged it all, the dungeons in China would become the Po Guild's turf. So the girl told her sidekick he had 1 month and warned that she'd be tagging along. Miryong promised her master she'd build a place worthy of him for when he finally arrived in this world. So she had to hustle because she'd soon get to see her legendary teacher at Japan's international airport. As the hero rolls in, everyone's yelling to clear the path. Loads of people wanted to know what move he used on the climber, especially since they thought he couldn't even use mana. Plus, they were curious how Hyonu knew a Fisher would pop up in Japan and how he managed to act so fast. Even Shun, who had been quiet, was all ears. But the hero just tossed the job of answering questions to the boy. And just as he started to figure out what was going on with all the reporters, the hero had already bolted. Back at his crib, Hyonu finally gets some downtime without any interruptions, especially since he trusts Seun to handle the chaos. Surprisingly, that mystery girl is up and about. And the first thing she does is bow and give a heartfelt thanks to the hero for saving her life. The girl's name was Hong Lin, and she explains that she's a Po Guild officer who was kidnapped by Ares while tackling one of their dungeons. But the real head-scratcher was something else, the tattoo on her shoulder. Hong Lin said it was the guild's official symbol, because her master said it meant that only the sky was above them. Hyonu, on the other hand, was like, what does that even mean? But she had already spilled the tea. For Miryong, it was a way to honor the one who was above all others, second only to the sky, and who should rightfully rule. However, the hero yelled for her to zip it, which totally freaked the girl out. Naturally, she asked if she'd messed up. But even though he didn't say it, Hyonu was ticked because this was another one of his blunders. He really couldn't figure out how he'd let all the goofy stuff he did in the tower get broadcast by someone back then. He thought if he mastered martial arts, he could finally break free from the tower. And that's when he came down with a bad case of 7th grade syndrome, mimicking all the lines and poses from the web novels and anime he'd watched. So it was a huge bummer that even after he grew out of it, someone was spreading stories about his cringy past. And the only person he could think of who would do that was the one who treated him like a master who by pure chance had a power link with the girl he accidentally saved. So the best plan Hyonu came up with was to send Hong Lin back with a note telling the guild boss to never come after him again. A few days later, after sending the girl back to China on the Korean show, Meeting Hunters, the host Ha Yong Lee wishes everyone a good day and introduces the new sensation of the hour, the hunter, Kim Hyonu. Meanwhile, all his buddies watching from home are totally shocked because they had no clue about any of this. Cyan, however, had a feeling since our hero did mention he had an announcement to make. And just as he'd hinted, Hyonu wasn't about to waste time sticking to the show's script. He strolls out, makes one single promise, and then drops the bomb that he's not only started a guild, but is also recruiting new members. It turns out that going on national television to recruit members meant he had resumes piling up at his doorstep. Honestly, Hyonu didn't see it playing out like this, and to make matters worse, Cyan bailed on helping him sort through them. So they struck a deal to get first dibs on dungeons every now and then. His squad, the other clan leaders, had his back though. Someone asks why he's even starting a guild if it's such a hassle, and our hero just shrugs, saying he's in it for the money. He's already raked in plenty of dough from his adventures, but now with his own dungeons, he's ready to cash in even more. His buddies joke that his obsession with money must come from a rough childhood. Later, a hunter's resume gets tossed in the trash right in front of him, leaving the guy completely floored. He's the top C-rank hunter, so he demands to know if Hyonu even read it. But he should have kept quiet because our hero snaps and kicks him out, since this hunter was famous for clearing dungeons and still got flat out rejected. Everyone's buzzing about what it takes to get in. Turns out it wasn't his D-level stats, but his selfish attitude that got him booted. The hero realizes this new skill of his is actually pretty useful. A while back, a figure known as A gave him props for defeating Chanma and offered to upgrade his skills, not just his info-gathering abilities. A wanted to add a personality assessment to the status skill, and at the time, Hayonu was basically like, what's the point of that? But now he sees it's pure gold for job interviews. With a new candidate before him, the hero uses his status skill and discovers she has an opportunistic personality. It's a little iffy, so he's on the fence about accepting her, but the other two candidates are perfect. One has a self-sacrificing nature, and the other is just incredibly friendly. So Hayonu's pumped and decides to give the girl a chance, lumping her in with the good vibe crew. That wraps things up for the day, and he's feeling incredibly lazy. Later, someone asks what kind of interview process wraps up in just an hour and a half. Our hero says it's more than enough time to find people who won't steal his stuff the first chance they get. Cyan understands it's about checking attributes, but Hayonu wonders why no S-rank hunters applied. Cyan explains that those hunters are extremely rare, with only about 5,000 of them in the whole world. Among them, Hayonu is ranked 163rd, while his friends are ranked 175th and 161st. Cyan's worried the hero doesn't know that the top 200 are all famous and are constantly fighting for each other's spots. The hero is shocked to hear his friends are ranked so high. And not long ago, he saw a poster of S-rank hunters with their names crossed out. Sion tells him those hunters are dead. They're supposed to be super strong, but many died chasing rare artifacts. Hunters can only boost their stats so much. If they leave the tower with C-rank strength, they can't hit level A-. To break through, they need an S+ grade item from the labyrinth's depths. The hero asks if the labyrinth is a hunter graveyard. C says many try to snag it through theft, leading to hunter assassins who get booted from the rankings, just like the hero saw with the Ares Guild's goons. Honu starts to see some shady folks in Power Love playing dirty. One of the first dungeons the Ares Guild gave him was the desolate swamp where he's chilling now. The hero lets his buddy bounce while he gears up to smack down the regenerating boss. If he's going to make bank, it's time to start milking these resources. He dives into the control room, bumping into the last people he ever wanted to see. They're shocked, but he tells them to chill. They remember the beatdown they got last time. Finally, Yonu asks how to get into the dungeon, and the guy yells, "The paperwork's not done yet." Alright, buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride. So our hero's cruising along all chill when suddenly, bam, he bumps into an old buddy. This dude's grinning like he just won the lottery, even though things are kind of a mess. Honu's not having it, though. He's all, "Yo, are you here? Because Ares sent you again." And the guy's like, "Yeah, but I'm out of that guild life now." Then he drops some serious tea about these hunters called Pandemonium. If you know about these guys, it's like hearing the ice cream truck when you're broke. They're top-tier mercenaries, all S-rank legends. They're like the Avengers, but with more murder. There's Jack Gunslinger, Aso, Bloodwind Master, Alan, and Anna Circular. If they're after you, well, good luck, buddy. Anya's all, "Ever heard of me, the class MVP?" But our hero's like, "Nah, sorry, not ringing any bells," which makes her madder than a cat in a bath. She brags about taking down top hunters thanks to her debuff magic. Then she traps our hero with magic ropes. Hanu's curious if she can draw magic circles too, but she tells him to zip it. Big mistake, because he was just deciding if he should wipe them out. Anya's suddenly sweating bullets. Everyone charges at him, but it's like watching a toddler try to tackle a pro wrestler. Meanwhile, in Jam China, in the Ween Guild's secret lair, Lee of Cheon, also known as Demon Asura, is down for the count. Mirang's not impressed, though. She's like, "Really, that's it?" And Lee's all, "You're cocky, but our leaders are coming." Mirang just laughs, and when Lee tries a last-ditch attack, she dodges like a ninja. She's got this killer move, Extreme Force of the Sovereign, and with just a punch, she sends Lee and his crew flying like paper planes. Back in the day, Hong Lin told her the master didn't want her around, but she's convinced he's just waiting for her to keep her promise. So she's on a mission to create a place worthy of him, and she's not wasting any time. Over in Guangjingu at the Orang Guild, Soyan's jaw drops. The hero brought someone to fix a magic circle, and it's none other than Anna. Sio's like, "Isn't she a criminal?" But Hayonu spills the beans about another Ares conspiracy. The hero's like, "Yeah, I took down Pandemonium, no biggie." Sion is skeptical, but our guy insists, "My stats are way more impressive than they seem." Even if he asked Av, she'd probably just claim her power level is too low. Hayonu tells his friend not to worry about Anya, since she's a total survivalist. Besides, right before she kicked the bucket, she was desperate to help out with spells and crafting, and now she's fixing the magic circle without any special equipment. Since Anna isn't needed anymore, Hayonu gifts her staff to his friend. Then he heads off on his next adventure, asking Sion to keep an eye on Anna for him. A little later, our hero strolls out of a convenience store with a bag full of mysterious goodies. He's parked in front of some big shot corporate building ready to go thank them for his recent haul. He saunters right through the entrance like he owns the place until the receptionist finally spots him. Naturally, everyone panics because they have a less than stellar history with our hero. Security guards immediately swarm him, declaring this area is off limits to anyone not in the Ares Guild. Meanwhile, our hero just wants a friendly chat with the guild leader and even brought a dialogue staff as a peace offering. And when any obstacles get in his way, he just bonks them with a toy hammer. This understandably still freaks everyone out since they're getting absolutely wrecked by a kid's toy. Hayonu calls them out for the bold move of blocking his path, casually hinting they might be getting a one-way ticket to the afterlife. Meanwhile, up in the boss's office, a manager is spilling the tea about the hero and his ridiculous toy hammer right before having a complete meltdown. Hukonu finally gets it. This hero is on an entirely different level. If word of this epic failure gets out, his reputation is toast. Hukonu can't even call for backup because they'd think he's a complete amateur. He's desperately trying to brainstorm a solution when the hero himself bursts in, casually asking how the boss is doing. To say Hukonu is terrified would be an understatement. He has zero time to dodge the hero's toy hammer smackdown. As he's sent flying, our hero remembers their little chat about payback, especially since the crew that threatened him was so forgettable. Even if our hero can't quite place the name, he knows this is all tied to the Pandemonium plan. So Hukonu asks if this is about payback, and our hero demands 20 billion this time. Backed into a corner, Hukonu has no choice but to agree. But before sealing the deal, Hayonu pins him with the hammer and warns him that he couldn't care less how many goons they send after him. He also suggests the boss might want to call the hospital if he wants his crew back in one piece. And with that, our hero bounces. But clearly, the guild leader didn't learn his lesson. Getting so thoroughly owned has only made him angrier. He figures if the Pandemonium plan isn't enough, he's going to need to bring in the big guns. But without any backup from the Ares office, his only option is to head to China for the Dragon Emperor, who's ranked number 5 in the world. On the 8th layer of the tutorial tower, a village is engulfed in flames and a young man is breathing his last. Standing before him, a girl perched atop a monster coolly informs him that the Guardian has lost their bet. So just as promised, she announces her intention to take the last city. The young man shouts that he can still fight, but she just scoffs at him. Finally, she hops off her monster and takes the first step. The Guardian charges forward with his axe just as she takes her second step. But as she takes her third step, a wave of power erupts, turning everything in its path to dust. The fourth step amplifies that power, and with the fifth, everything is completely reduced to raw energy. For a few moments, this energy flows freely, and when it subsides, absolutely nothing remains. By the fifth step, it's already game over. Her technique is called Extermination in 10 steps. Now she's ready to summon her little monsters for some more fun. Meanwhile, back in the real world, news of our hero's chaotic visit to the Ares Guild finally breaks. CCTV footage caught him entering, but strangely, the guild hasn't released an official statement, leaving everyone puzzled. But with the dungeon rights shifting, it's obvious Hyuxionu made a mistake. Sion asks the heroes if they've caught the latest news. If Ares reports him, he's looking at detention, but the hero figures he was just acting in self-defense. Besides, he only used a toy, so he thinks he's totally in the clear. Just then, another news alert pops up. This one's about money, which immediately gets his attention. It's for beginner classes in Japan, and since they're offering 50 million, Hayonu admits that even though it sounds like a drag, he's totally hyped. An urgent message pops up about a new climber on the 9th layer. The system warns that the Guardian will be summoned in 1 hour. Hayonu isn't exactly thrilled about this new complication, especially since he's right in the middle of his side gig teaching newbies. Acting a bit strange, the hero apologizes and dashes off, claiming he'll show them how to take down a boss effortlessly. But just as he's about to go, he gets suddenly teleported away. With no other choice, Hayonu wonders, why is another climber here already? My power-up hasn't even activated yet. AB chimes in, oops, my bad. She then spills the tea, explaining she's leveled up a bit, which is how she got the 411 on the new climber. She wanted to give him a heads up, especially since this one is rolling in with a whole squad. Honu asks if it's going to be like that first monster they found in the crevasse, but AB tells him, nah, this is a whole different ballgame. She explains that low-level climbers like Arir only summon monsters the system generates to assist them. Besides, those monsters are low-key weak and not really considered part of a proper squad. This time it's a mid-level climber, and they're essentially the boss of their own floor. And when Honu asks if they're stronger than Chayanma, the girl nods, yep, for real. So they both realize that if they can beat this challenge, their power levels are going to skyrocket. Later, back in the real world at the Orang Guild, Yonu bursts in, demanding, "How's that magic circle coming along?" Sean replies, "Dude, stop kicking the door down." Anyway, Yonu is just checking to see if she's on her A game. Anna tells him, "I'm almost done fixing it, and trust me, it's going to be next level." So Yonu brings up something else he wanted to talk about. Earlier, Anna had mentioned her special move involved teleportation and drawing circles. Shoen is shocked. "Wait, what? You could have just poofed out of here." Then Anna explains, "Well, I need a magic circle to make it work." Anyway, she promises she wasn't planning any escape, but Honu zones out when a system message announces that all climbers have reached the 9th layer. So when they ask where he's teleporting to, he points to Germany. In Leipzig, Eastern Germany, the Challenger is already causing chaos, prompting the military guildmaster Schuzer to demand they stop or else. But the demon girl just laughs, thinking he's full of himself. This makes Schuzer double down, bragging about his numbers. Over at the German Hunters Association, the council is convinced their S ranks are unbeatable, at least on paper. Anyway, the girl understands where his confidence comes from, so she says, "Cool, you're fighting with your crew, but heads up, so am I." She then introduces herself, the climber, with a list of titles. "I am the stuff of nightmares, master of darkness, the queen of spooky, leader of the 100 yokai parade, and the goddess of chaos." One of her pals, a giant centipede, suddenly appears. Its teeth are as sharp as dragon fangs, and it dives back underground, wrecking everything. Back with Hayonu, he's stressing out because the flight is over 11 hours long. So he yells, "Hurry up with that magic circle." On the phone, CO's reading the news and freaking out about a massive rift that just tore open in Germany. But Hayonu is already in the loop. He saw it on the news and was just waiting for the official call for help. CO is like, "You gonna go handle this rift just like the last one?" But then she gets a little suspicious, wondering, wait, why is Hayonu being so helpful without asking for something in return? Anyway, one particular news piece catches his attention. It's an offer. Apparently, the goddess of chaos is bored and has suggested a bet instead of just wrecking everything, and the rules are pretty simple. She'll hang out in the city for 24 hours, giving someone a shot to beat her and make her leave for good. The deal allows for challengers to fight her solo or as a team, but if no one can stop her, she'll just continue her world destruction tour. Hearing this news over at the German Hunters Association, everyone is on edge. Officer Christian Burgels is stressing out as a junior agent, reports over 20,000 casualties so far, with the property damage steadily climbing. Tragically, the 32 S-Class and 68 A-Class hunters they sent in have all been wiped out. To make matters worse, the association still can't get a hold of any of the top 5 international rankers. Just then, the agent reporting the casualties gets a call and has to step away. Already swamped, he answers the phone, clearly not in the best of moods. The moment he hears it's about reinforcements from the same hunter who took down Kiyoma in Japan, a huge weight is lifted off his shoulders. Finally true to Anya's 5-hour promise. The teleportation magic circle is finished, and just like that, boom, Hayonu is in Germany. He can't help but admire how incredibly convenient this magic is. Of course, his arrival doesn't go unnoticed. One of those strange monsters spots him, but Hayonu is quicker, stopping it cold with a flying kick. Hayonu seems more excited than concerned. He scrambles up the monster's body and runs straight for its head. He lands a solid punch, yelling that they started it by trying to intimidate him first. With that monster down, Hayonu looks around and calls out for the short girl, Chisuko, demanding she show herself. Military drones are broadcasting the chaos live, and everyone is trying to locate Hayonu until he suddenly appears right in the center of it all. The goddess of chaos sizes him up and asks if he is to be her first challenger. He wonders why she's being so formal when she looks like a little kid, which makes the whole situation pretty awkward. Hayonu calls her out for proposing a game only after causing all this chaos and destruction. But the mere suggestion that she should pay for the damages to the city really ticks her off. In response to her taunts, he says it's none of her business, whether he's arrogant or just clueless. She sighs that she normally tries to enjoy her time with the first challenger, but she's sick and tired of the disrespect from so-called guardians. She tells him they'll find out soon enough if there's any real power behind his attitude. For perspective, a dragon only lasted 5 steps against her, and a self-proclaimed strongest hunter only made it to 7. Now it's Hayonu's turn to test his luck. With a sly grin, she takes her first step, then the second. The entire city starts to tremble as a bizarre energy ripples through the air. Hayonu feels the immense pressure, instantly realizing it's pure mana energy that's wrecking everything around them. On her third step, he understands that the steps themselves are the attack, and that he has to stop her. But she takes her 4th step, and then her 5th, unleashing an even greater wave of chaos. Hayonu focuses his own magic, gearing up to unleash his most powerful attack. He charges forward, but bam, the 6th and 7th steps happen in quick succession, cranking the pressure up to an unbelievable level. Hayonu can no longer control his mana, as the goddess's aura grows stronger and constricts it. The pressure is so intense it feels like his body is being torn apart from the inside. Seeing him endure, the goddess of chaos actually applauds his strength. But she keeps going calmly, taking the 8th step and then the 9th. In that moment, he strikes with his Heel of the Sovereign of Extreme Destruction technique, but he can't land a clean hit, only barely managing to disrupt the 9th step. Still, it's not enough to stop her from reaching. The power of the 10th step, which brings the full destructive release of her 10-step extermination technique. As he takes the hit, he feels the mana inside him surge to a breaking point, like it's about to tear him apart from the inside out. But just as quickly, the immense pressure vanishes, and the girl admits our hero is pretty impressive. He was the only person to ever make her use the 10-step extermination and still be left standing. Because of that, she congratulates him one more time. Since he managed to endure it, the goddess of chaos explains why the city wasn't completely wrecked. AV had warned him this climber would be stronger, but our hero didn't expect this much of a power gap. Finally, she asks what he's going to do, because despite surviving, his power looks dangerously unstable. She asks if he's going to beg for his life or try to keep his dignity until the very end, but he reminds her she forgot a third option, not losing but getting back up to finish her off. She was not expecting that, and she bursts into genuine hearty laughter. But the amusement fades quickly as she decides to face him with everything she's got. All the mana she can summon, as the leader of the 100 demons, is unleashed. She challenges him to try and withstand her full power. Hayonu immediately notices the energy around him getting thicker, and he feels the pain creeping back into his body. Not everything was a total loss, though, because a system window suddenly popped up. It announced that since he interrupted the mana expansion, his resistance level received a boost. Our hero's resistance was already at S rank, which is why he was able to tank all that damage like a boss. So with his resistance leveling up, Hayonu figured he could probably handle the next attack. Plus a surge of external mana swooped in, channeling into him just like it did during the fight against Kyoma. Right now our hero knows he needs to pull off something legendary, just like he did before. Back in the tower, he had a whole roster of masters from all the pop culture he'd binged. To others, they might just be fictional characters, but to him, they were legends. And one of their moves was the destroyer used by the great Asura to stop the mythical demon god. Remembering this, our hero unleashes his power and starts shaping his mana into magical limbs. Seeing this, the goddess is completely baffled, having never seen a technique like it before. Even so, the dangerous feeling she gets from it makes her want to wrap this up quickly. She takes a step, but surprise, it never hits the ground as one of the hero's summoned limbs blocks it. Hayonu, still standing far away, had managed to extend his reach with that move and stop the girl in her tracks. On her second step, the very same move blocked her path again. The goddess is absolutely fuming and kicks the limb away, screaming at the hero for daring to lay a hand on her. In her mind, she recalls that she still has 8 steps left to use. It's a stacking technique and doesn't get weaker if a step is missed, so she just needs to keep piling them on. That is, if our hero wasn't already one move ahead of her. Besides using those arms, the spike on his head begins to generate a magical field and launches a projectile right before her third step. Little by little, the goddess grows frustrated that her power isn't building up as it should. But more than that, she's infuriated that a mere mortal is managing to interfere with her. In a slick counter move this time, it's Hayonu who takes a step, and she cleverly uses it to count as her fourth, which once again creates a ray of destruction around our hero. The goddess of chaos screams, declaring, "This is the true nature of my technique," and she yells that he won't be able to withstand it until the very end. So the fifth step was about to connect, but our hero stopped it cold by placing his foot directly on top of hers, halting in front of her and leaving her completely unable to use the 10-step destruction. Hayonu even takes a second to mock her power, which seems a whole lot less impressive now. Unable to stack her destructive energy, the girl starts to panic. In contrast, after preparing a new move, our hero declares it's his turn to strike. Alongside his own arms, 4 others made of mana materialize to help create a magical field. Magical spheres shaped like blooming flowers begin to appear all around him. And so using Asura's martial art, the hero delivers the ultimate attack known as the Nullifying Fist, which heads straight for the defenseless goddess of chaos, who in the end gets hit head on. and simply can't believe she was defeated so easily. A system notification appears congratulating the hero on his victory and summoning him immediately. Upon his arrival, A celebrates with the hero for successfully stopping the mysterious goddess of chaos. Thanks to his performance in the battle, it's announced that his authority has been upgraded from low level to medium-low level. A had called him over to spill the details about the new authority and information he would gain from his promotion. Hyonu, on the other hand, found it strange to be summoned so quickly, but A simply explained that she was very excited. In the end, the hero doesn't complain because he thinks it's awesome to learn about everything sooner. However, the first thing he wants to talk about is the room, which has become noticeably larger. A explains that every time the Guardian defeats a climber and their authority levels up this space also receives an upgrade. She mentions that several things have changed now that he possesses medium-low level authority. First on the list is the power to decorate the system area, handing him a controller. A tells him to imagine the room he desires and then press the button. The first change happens, instantly impressing A as it transforms into the first floor of the tutorial tower. Next, the hero chooses a cozier design and A is once again impressed. A explains that she only understands how the buttons work, but can't actually use them herself or recognize these places. After all, ever since her creation, she has always been confined to this small space. Hyonu asks in surprise, "Wait, you sleep in here too?" A casually replies that she just uses the table for that, making Hyonu think she has a knack for playing the victim. Moving on, his status and notification skills have received an upgrade. There's also a new skill called Entry that allows him to pop into this area whenever he wants. Pretty cool, right? Hyonu is thrilled that he can just drop in and ask questions anytime. With his new and improved authority, he checks his status window to see if anything looks different. Even though his stats rose after beating the climber, Hyonu wonders, why do I feel stronger than what's being shown? Luckily, with his higher authority, A is finally allowed to spill the beans. And Hyonu is all smiles, ready for the explanation. Apparently, the tower's creator placed a limiter on challengers to keep them from becoming overpowered, a function of the system itself. Hyonu asks, "Can you be a little more specific?" She clarifies, "Even with the limiter, the Guardian's body continues to grow stronger." Hyonu is taken aback. It's as simple as that. Unfortunately, she can't tell him exactly how inaccurate the displayed information is. And as for how to escape the tower, A has no information. Hyonu is furious. He's so frustrated that even if it risks destroying the world, he says just bring on a high-level climber already. Meanwhile, over at the Wien Guild in Shanghai, China, the 17th ranked Hunmu Hun gets completely overwhelmed by Meringue. She thought it would be fun to fight a top ranker from Wien, but she effortlessly throws him to the ground and calls his performance pathetic. Mirang then asks, "Cheon, did you bring what I asked for?" He replies, "Yes. The high-definition video of our protagonist's recent battle is ready to play." Mirang is eager to see him showcasing the Asura martial art. She is absolutely delighted to see her master shatter everyone's expectations. Model. Then she asks one of her guys to get her up to speed on the guild's status, including their latest territorial expansion. Only 8% of China isn't theirs yet, so they're pretty much running the show. Mirang thinks to herself that it's finally time to keep her promise. Years ago, before she left, Meringue had called out to her master. When she departed the tower, she vowed to create a place worthy of him. She had promised a place fit for a legend, and in her memory, Hugh had flashed a charming grin in thanks. All of her efforts have led Meringue to this moment, ready for their grand reunion. Meanwhile, back in Hyonu's city, he's looking over a reward document from Germany, but it seems more like an invitation to relocate there. She snatches the paper to check out the details. Besides cash and loot from the goddess, it offers complete tax exemption and a host of other perks. It's way better than what Japan offered. As for the Chayama sword from the Asian delegation, C decides she's keeping it. Seo starts whining, so Hugh reminds her about the upgraded magic circle he gave her, pointing out that not everyone got something. Putting the loot aside, the girl asks, why is our hero globetrotting on all these epic quests? All his friends are curious as well. But Hyonu just says, do I need a reason? I just enjoy putting arrogant wannabes in their place. With his reputation, no one doubts him. After the grub incident, Hyonu finds himself deep in thought near the tutorial tower. The tower had appeared on an ordinary day, bringing monsters with it and pulling people like him inside. He was trapped there for 12 years, climbing from the 1st to the 100th floor over and over again. While his companions from the tower were able to leave, he cleared the first floor thousands of times. Even though he's finally out, Hyonu is desperate to understand the reason why. Having cleared 3 major rifts, his authority is still underwhelming, but hey, it's better than nothing. His friends notice he's lost in thought and call for him to head home with them. He laughs it off, denying that he's worried, and suggests that maybe, just maybe, he's actually excited. 10 days after the Chaos Goddess was defeated, reporter Ha Yong is back on the air featuring the legendary hunter, Kim Hyonu. Ha Yong kicks things off by recalling Hyonu's last press conference, where he dropped some major bombshells. But Hyonu just says he was being honest, and the presenter finds his bluntness hilarious. Alright, so Ha Yong has her viewers glued to their screens, right? She was incredibly curious about how the young man's special skills worked, but his only explanation was, "I just learned my martial arts in the tower." That's all there is to it. This broadcast caused a massive resurgence in the popularity of martial arts. It was a real comeback story. So Ha Yong thought it would be a great idea to bring in some martial arts masters for their expert opinion, and our hero agreed to it. These elderly masters showed up to promote their Blue Dragon sword style. But our hero saw right through them. He knew they were just trying to capitalize on the trend. So he stomped the ground and declared, "Allow me to clear up any misunderstandings for everyone." In a flash, Hyonu snatched one of the master's swords and announced, "The power comes from me, not the martial art itself." He was about to prove his point right there. He effortlessly copied the master's movements. The old man was stunned, and our hero said, "Watch and learn the proper way to do it." Hyonu recalled reading stories with a similar theme. He perfectly executed the moves of the story's protagonist and unleashed the celestial dragon's radiance. The power was so immense that the ceiling of the television studio began to crumble. To conclude his demonstration, the hero declared, "I am the genuine article, not these imitators." As he was leaving, a member of the production crew called out to him. To his surprise, it was Anya, who now had a regular office job. Our hero joked it must be a decent job, and she nervously agreed. He reminded her that the only reason she was still around was because she was useful to him. He warned her that he would treat her no differently than any other hunter, and she was perfectly fine with that. The hero assured her everything would be fine as long as she didn't try to double-cross him. And his warning gaze made it perfectly clear what would happen if Anna ever thought of running. For now, though, he left offering to help if she ever needed it. Anna had been working in the admin role for 10 days. She had no complaints, the work was easy, and the pay was decent, but living this way still felt strange. Just then, a fax arrived, boom! The transfer papers for the Ares Guild were ready. Meanwhile, at Incheon Airport, someone shouted for the president to wait up. A young man asked if he really intended to visit the Po Guild. Despite the risks, Hukonu was more furious than ever. The president told the young man to zip it, reminding him just how much trouble they were in. Hukonu had lost his monopoly and his power ending up just like the people he'd ruined. The president made it clear there was no turning back now, and Hukonu was ready to go all in, no matter the cost. He didn't care about acquiring more dungeons, he just wanted the Pado Guild to take down Hyonu. Over in New York, a man at a lavish table asked, "Did I hear that correctly?" The man sitting there was Martin Brand, the founder of the Ares Guild. A subordinate reported that the South Korean branch had transferred the rights to several dungeons. Martin remarked, "The branch president made a mistake, but everyone does." He then added, "However, you can't call it just a mistake until it has been corrected." With that, Martin instructed the young man to never report a problem without bringing a solution along with it. Without a solution, it's simply a failure, and Hukonu is the real problem here. And failures are not welcome in the Ares Guild. Martin declared that while they cleaned up the president's mess, they would also be reclaiming their dungeon rights. Meanwhile, in China, Hukonu was wondering why he had received a personal invitation. Hukonu was internally freaking out, realizing that asking for help from Pado Ares' rival was a terrible move. The sound of approaching footsteps made him freeze in fear, but thankfully, an employee simply greeted him with the news that his entry was approved. Hukonu was led to the entrance by masked figures, and a fresh wave of fear washed over him as he stood before the gate. So this was the domain of the supreme leader, the dominator of the continent, and the Dragon Emperor. Or so he thought, until a small, cute girl suddenly appeared to greet him. As Hukonu tried to maintain his composure and be polite, his brain was doing mental cartwheels, especially with all the masked guards giving him the side-eye. Miryong cut straight to the chase, asking who exactly he wanted them to eliminate. Every instinct in Hukonu's gut was screaming at him not to say it. But he had come too far to back down now, so he revealed his target, the hunter who defeated the Chaos Goddess in Germany. If they succeeded, he would hand over 20% of the Ares branch's dungeons in Korea, plus a staggering 80 trillion won. The girl seemed to understand, but as she stood up, her entire aura radiated pure fury. She was furious that Hukonu had the audacity to ask her to assassinate her own master. Boom. A massive blast of energy was her definitive answer to his outrageous request. Hayuk Seonu survived the blast, but he was definitely not feeling 100%. He'd come to arrange the hero's death, but he had no idea why she was so enraged. Then it dawned on him. She had mentioned a master. Hukonu frantically yelled that it was all a misunderstanding, even as she confirmed that yes, she was an apprentice. Miryong explained that she and her master had met in the tutorial tower. Although he didn't understand why she believed herself to be the hero's student, Hukonu hoped this connection could be his ticket out of this mess. Hukonu quickly tried to poke holes in her story. Since Miryong isn't Korean, he argued Hyonu couldn't possibly be her master. He explained that there are 158 tutorial towers worldwide, each in a different location. And as far as he knew, the Korean tower only summoned people native to Korea. Miryong asked if that was the best he had, and when he confirmed it was, she kicked him out with zero chill. She wondered aloud if that was really his best attempt at saving his own life. Miryong concedes Hukonu's point about the tower summoning locally, but unfortunately for him, she already cleared the Korean tutorial tower. She was pretty salty about it back then, having been dragged into the tower on her dad's orders. Hukonu still presses her, asking if she's certain Hyun is the one she met inside. The girl retorts that doubting her is the same as denying her entire existence, since everything about her reflects her master's style. From her hair to her hips, the master's crest on her back, and even her name. So for her, there's no greater disrespect than that. Miryong warns him not to expect a peaceful end, especially since he tried to kill her master and disowned her by rejecting their bond to save his own skin. Meanwhile, in A's dimension room, the hero introduces her to television. At first, she was confused, wondering, what's this for? But it didn't take long for her to get completely hooked. Avi even asked the hero to create a PlayStation she saw on TV. She's dying to try it, but as a guardian assistant system, she can't create things herself. After some thought, the hero decides to indulge her a little. She gives him a huge hug, incredibly grateful for the chance to experience new things, making the hero feel like he's raising a daughter. Changing the subject. AB says she needs to share something that might be a trap, but it has to remain their secret. Later, back at home, the hero's friends are wondering why he's just staring at his food instead of eating. A had informed him about the possibility of a new climber. Before he left the tower, there were 3 crevasses in total. Normally, a crevasse should disappear, but 2 of these 3 haven't, which has left the hero deep in thought. Switching gears, Seokwon reminds the hero that he's leaving for Germany in 3 days. He offers to come along, but Hyonu explains it's a short trip. Seokwon wants to check out the tourist spots, but Hyonu knows they won't have time for that. Seoyan figures the mage hunters can repair the damage quickly. Mages can conjure magic circles, so fixing up the city happens at turbo speed, about 10 times faster than normal. That's the reason no city ever gets completely destroyed by all the monster invasions. A big round of applause for the mage class hunters. Oh, and Seoan dropped some news about a major auction happening in Germany soon. Apparently, the International Hunters Association is hosting an epic auction in Germany. So since the hero is already heading there, his squad wants to catch a ride with him via teleport, which to Seo's delight, the hero is totally cool with. Thinking it over, they speculate that the crevasses are related to levels. So if AB is correct, there are still 2 climbers out there, but getting to them will be a serious grind. On top of that, Hyonu has other things on his plate. He definitely needs to level up because while he's been in a few battles, they were only mid-level, not top-tier encounters. Seoan overhears and asks what kind of preparation he's talking about. She teases him for spacing out, but adds that if he needs to prepare, it should just be a quick 3-day session. In the end, the 3 days for the trip flew by, and 5 days later, the German auction began. Meanwhile, over in China, some shady business is going down as Hukonu's documents are being burned. The boss had gone to meet the Pedo Guild at 1 p.m. at the Central Palace, but he hasn't returned yet, which is highly suspicious. There's a good chance something happened to him. Believing the boss might be dead, his subordinate is in a hurry to destroy the evidence and get out of town. He figures he can escape notice since he's just a second-rate assistant. That plan might have worked if they weren't dealing with the Po Guild, but then, out of nowhere, someone interrupts the guy at his hotel. This man, likely a Po hunter, chuckles that he won't kill him without having a little fun first. Still, the sidekick freaks out because he's facing a numbered knight. These assassin hunters from the central office are called knights, and they're usually ranked in the top 40. The guy wonders why knights are here, but deep down, he knows the score. His instincts kick in, and he tries to crawl away, but with no chance of winning. The obvious happens a payback against the Ares Guild. Other hunters show up asking about the target, and are told the job is done. Finally, they realize it's time to bounce and start chatting about waiting for Hyonu to show up, but they figure it's not necessary since they might have already helped. As for the guy who got the dungeons, 4 hunters were sent to take him out. And even though it seems like overkill, they get it since he handled the last big mess. Finally, Hyonu's chilling with his crew watching the auction kick off. Siwon is like, when is our hero gonna ditch that athletic hoodie? She understands wearing it in some places, but not here. But our hero is more bugged by them dissing his style, especially since he rocked the same look at the award ceremony and nobody said a thing. Switching gears, Siwon mentions there are no such plus rank items today, but she's not too bummed since they're incredibly rare anyway. Hyonu hears this and realizes his mysterious goddess of chaos essence is one of those items. He snagged it at the award ceremony. It was a drop from the mysterious goddess of chaos. But aside from its rank, there's no information on what it actually does. Then he remembers his buddy kinda dissed it too. Plus, with all the authority limitations, nobody knows squat. Back at the auction, the first item goes for a cool 1 billion to buyer number 32. Hyonu checks the item's deets, thinks it's decent, but even seeing an S-rank item like the Great Spear of Aslan, he's not into it, especially knowing it's a knockoff without the original's backstory, which just makes him want to bail. Outside the auction, there are other hunters, but as one tries to flex, Hyonu spots him without a care in the world. The truth is, he's just overhearing some cocky extras yapping. So this time he warns them he's about to teach them a lesson. And from the looks on their faces, it's clear they regret clocking in for work today. In Martin's office, his sidekick spills the tea about the branch leader in Korea, who's probably still kicking. As for the other guy, he says they're about to throw hands, but Martin peeps that his assistant is stressing out, worried the knights might not be up for the challenge. When he asks, his assistant says numbers 4, 7, 9, and 10 were sent. Martin's chill about it, though. He already knew 4 knights wouldn't be enough to take him down. His plan was just to see how his artifacts would mess with him. Meanwhile, Hyonu just clapped those assassins and snagged one of those artifacts, so it's not a total loss yet. Either way, Martin is still getting the answers he seeks. In a shady-looking place, someone is sitting at a massive table. The evil vibes this dude's giving off scream, "He's not your average Joe." He finally asks what's up, and another guy there reports, 2 climbers got wrecked. He then spills the names of the 2 who reached the 9th layer. The evil-looking man claps, having thought the Guardian would be easy pickings for the climbers. It's still up in the air who will reach the 9th layer next. But with this unexpected curveball, the man is hyped to see what happens next. Back to our main guy, who's got a bag stuffed with loot from the fight. His squad is shocked when they leave the auction and see him surrounded by bodies, but thank goodness the cameras caught it all. Siwon asks if he found model. Anything but the hero's like, nope, nada. Plus, it's wild how the CCTV caught it all without anyone noticing. But more than that, the kid roasts the hero for leaving them unrecognizable, especially since it looked like a one-sided smackdown. Yonu remembers their attack combo was tricky, but nothing he couldn't handle. Since they were out in the open and casting distortion spells, there'd be no records. Finally, C bounces to Grep. Some souvenirs before heading back to Korea, but he's vague about who they're for. So the main guy's left solo with that massive bag, and he's curious to dig through it. And boom, using his status power, he finds Borg's Hungry Spear, but with his info power, it's renamed Imitation. There's a bunch of stuff with this imitation tag hinting at a fake with some random code. He thinks they might be fake artifacts, but Hanu finds zilch about the creator. In the end, he's got a hunch something's up. Yesterday's attackers were a cut above the rest, so 2 thoughts pop up. Either they're Ares Guild peeps or mercenaries, which makes finding the mastermind trickier. Putting that aside, the hero knows he's got no time to waste on the artifact mystery. After all, he's still got to go back and teach Hukonu a lesson. Right after that thought, the hero storms into the guild, kicking the door and accidentally hitting an innocent employee. Hyonu demands to know where Huku is, if not in the office, and obviously threatens the kid for playing dumb. Sadly, all he knows is Huku bounced 4 days ago and where to. He said he was off to China for a meeting with the PTO Guild. That night at his buddy's crib, Hyonu asks if the kid knows anything about the Imperial Guild. The kid spills that it's taken over almost all the dungeons in China, even though they only had half not long ago. It wasn't easy, but in China it's legal to take over by force. Hyonu gets the survival of the fittest vibe, but the kid warns it wasn't always like this. At first, all dungeons belonged to the country they were in, so transferring ownership was a total pain until maybe 3 or 4 years ago when things flipped. Rumor has it the person who changed the laws is now the PTO guild leader, and the timing was perfect for them to swoop in. After hearing all this, the hero tries to remember if he ever talked about the outside world with his disciple. Back in the day, during one of their first meetups, Miryong asked if the hero knew who he was chatting with, but he just told her to zip it and ordered her to be his disciple. Miryong was all about following the crowd to survive, but then boom, fate threw her into danger with this mysterious masked dude. And even though Hayonu seemed kind of harsh, he made it super clear that as his top student, he'd never let her bite the dust. But plot twist, he sent her packing because he'd taught her all his tricks. Miryong didn't want to bounce, but Hayonu showed her she wasn't the timid weak girl anymore, so she wasn't going to let anyone boss her around anymore. His parting words were, "Never forget my lessons, and remember nothing's above you except me in the sky." These were some of the epic lines he dropped, but he was so into his speech he missed her comeback. It would have been cool if he could recall it now. Seon then spills the tea about the PTO Guild being this epic empire. Even without much intel beyond the gossip, the heroes are chill and ready to jet. Next stop, China, or more specifically, the PTO Guild. Inside China's Imperial Guild Palace nighttime is the squad leader's chance to unwind. Even after 4 years, though, everything remains crystal clear in her mind. The tower was a total game changer, teaching her that some things simply can't be bought. She was forced to confront her own weakness, but just as she was about to break, she found her master. For someone raised like a puppet whose spending was entirely dictated by the political scene, Hyonu showed her a new kind of love. Unlike her own father, who never saw her as a daughter, her master taught her to stand up for herself. Hyonu undoubtedly saved her from a very grim destiny. With more influence, no one in China will be able to oppose the Po Guild, and when that happens, Mirong is going to find her master. She silently promises him that it won't be long now. Meanwhile, in a hotel in the capital city, those hunters from before receive a text ordering them to stop Hyonu. One of them is cool about it, but the other is panicking. The younger one admits he's scared too, but knows that running isn't an option. As assassins, they have to prioritize the mission. Maybe they can stall until Hyonu is taken out. Still, why Martin sent them on this suicide mission is a complete mystery. They know their target isn't the type to make careless mistakes. There are 10 Knight members ranked by strength and often boosted by artifacts. But our hero took out 4 of them all by himself. The plan had been to avoid fighting until it was absolutely necessary. Then out of nowhere, the hotel shakes like an earthquake and one of the knights gets thrown into the wall. His partner whips out his weapon just in time to defend against the surprise attack. A member of the Po Guild is there, demanding to know if they're behind Wuen's death. The knight yells, asking who the intruder is, but blades fly past and his head hits the floor before he can even react. The masked man tells the surviving assassin not to hold a grudge since they merely killed a subordinate his master wanted gone. He was only there to collect their remains. The next day at the Oran Guild's B2 training center, the mage asks why our hero is even going if he's complaining so much. He simply says that he needs to clear up a misunderstanding. For Hyonu, who lost his parents at a young age, life had always been about survival, not this kind of drama. But everything changed when he entered the chaos of the tower. He was fine being a weird loner, but he never expected a disciple to reveal his past. Now the hero is focused on taking down Hukonu and getting back home ASAP. The girl asks how he plans to make the trip, given that the authorities are turning a blind eye. It would be illegal immigration, but the hero insists this is not a vacation. He acknowledges the problem, but he isn't sweating it. Hyonu has always handled things himself, but this time he's not so confident. Anya is having it worse, having pulled an all-nighter because the hero suddenly decided to leave. He approaches her, ready to ask something incredibly important. Then boom. A few seconds later, our hero's eyes snap open in China. And boy, he probably wishes they hadn't because he's staring right at the Po Guild's cringeworthy slogan. The only thing above you is the sky, which basically just means him in the sky, as he once told his disciple. Anyway, the soldiers are yelling, "Who is this guy?" and demanding to see his ID. But Hyonu is so over it and just hops the wall. Before he deals with the leader of Ares, he has to tear down this ridiculous place. Hyonu gets straight to business using his shadow. Step to go to town on the building. The soldiers are freaking out, calling for backup like their lives depend on it. But Hyonu gets even more irritated when he sees these clowns wearing copies of his mask. Usually he would dodge their attacks effortlessly. But then he sees they're using his own techniques. He's furious because the imitation is so pathetic. Even though he was the one who taught the technique, it was the real deal. He seriously couldn't believe his disciple had shared it with them. So he chimes in, "You're all doing it wrong," and demonstrates proper form with some epic moves. He zips around, showing them how it's done with the Demon King strike, sending them flying without, actually killing anyone. But even without any casualties, he catches the attention of someone he totally wasn't expecting. Miryong appears, and Hyonu instantly recognizes her just from her vibe. And yeah, the fond look she gives him is a dead giveaway too. Anyway, Miryong is overcome with emotion, asking if he's really her master. So cornered, he just says, "Yeah, it's been a while." For years, Miryong had done everything to prepare for her master's return, from establishing a guild to changing national laws. But none of the accolades she received mattered, because it was all for her master. So she kneels and declares she's been waiting for him for 1,532 days, 2 hours, 21 minutes, and 30 seconds. Even though our hero is feeling incredibly awkward, everyone else is bowing to the true master of China's #1 guild. After their brief reunion, they head over to the master's ridiculously blinged out throne. Hyonu feels super weird being treated like some kind of god. So Miryong asks if he doesn't like it, because if not, she's ready to take it up with the craftsman. Hyonu's just like, cut the nonsense, and tells her to just relax. As he's sitting there, he can't help but wonder how much money went into this throne, and honestly, he's not even sure what he's doing here. Hyonu isn't one to just go with the flow, but the pressure from his disciple was too much to resist. The backstory is that he saved his disciple inside the tower and taught her martial arts, but the lessons were just for show, so he never bothered to look for her afterward. He decides to test her loyalty by summoning and then dismissing her, and she obeys instantly both times. He has no idea how to deal with someone this devoted, but then he remembers he's here to put an end to this whole charade. Since he hasn't checked it yet, he uses his authority to view her status window, and her overly loyal personality trait immediately stands out. So he has a few things to say, but first he asks about a guy named Huyan who's supposed to be here. Luckily, he finds him, and he's not in as bad of shape as he'd expected. Having kept his end of the deal, he gives Miryong props for her part. Finally, Hyonu wakes the guy up with a kick, and Huyan is completely stunned to see him. Ignoring the strange situation, Huyan immediately begs to be saved from this overzealous disciple, a plea that would have gotten him killed if her master wasn't present. So our hero says he'll let the guy live in exchange for information, starting with everything he knows about the incident in Germany. In a bunker near New York City, 3 knights are stressing out over their next mission. Meanwhile, a man named Martin tells them, nail this and you'll score an SST plus ranked artifact. Back in South Korea, at the main office of the Goryeo Guild, the members are being grilled about their next labyrinth raid. They're still on the fence about it, since the last artifact they got was a pretty big score. Seo chimes in, what's the big rush? He hasn't even sold off his loot from the last one yet. But Seo is dead serious, thinking he needs to level up his skills and fast. Even though he was the first to escape the tower, their party has been shrinking because their skills have plateaued. Suwon suggests, maybe it's because they're too busy managing their own guilds. But that just makes everyone remember the massive power gap between them and the main character. Meanwhile, over at the PTO Guild, it's become crystal clear that all the orders came directly from the Ares Guild's boss. 2 of those sneaky knights are still alive and have already spilled the beans. So Hyonu starts begging again, and our hero is like, I'll keep my word. Down in the underground, there's a D-rank dungeon known as the Rat Labyrinth. Basically, it's a total rat party where they munch on humans, but they only inflict pain if you have C++ resistance. That's why the wild disciples are all like, if I can't escape, I'm going to be in pain forever. Since our hero isn't a complete jerk, he decides to sentence Hyonu to 30 days in this rat trap. And of course, the former branch chief has no say in the matter. When the young guy gets knocked out, a ring slips right off his finger. It's the Usurian ring, which boosts strength by an ST plus rank, but it turns out to be a fake artifact. So since the orders came from the big boss, Honu is ready to make him pay as well. Without wasting any time, he announces that he's moving on, which the girl mistakenly thinks means he's ditching her. In the end, our hero promises to return, but he has to deal with the Ares Guild first. So he takes off, leaving her on her own, and she immediately tells her crew to listen up. She gives the order for all Ares Guild members in the area to be completely wiped out. Back in A's room, even though she isn't 100% sure, she identifies the ring as a fake artifact. It's explained that artifacts are crafted from materials found on other layers. After they're inspected, they're taken to labyrinths and imbued with power by linking them to stories or legends. This makes our hero wonder what happens to the other layers when their materials are taken. But even though she can't reveal much, A explains that they vanish because climbers have to destroy the floor in order to ascend the tower. Getting back to the ring, A believes it's a top-notch fake, which in her opinion makes more sense if a climber was the one who created it. A had mentioned earlier that there might be 2 climbers on this particular layer. Anyway, he tells the girl that she needs to do a major cleanup of the place. There were even food crumbs on the couch, so using his control, our hero simply makes her gaming console vanish. And he warns her that he'll be keeping it until he returns. Of course, A, who's now completely hooked on gaming, yells that she'll do anything to get it back. And even though our hero seems to be enjoying this, A gets so stressed out that she starts to cry. Later that night at the Imperial Po Guild in China, one of those numbered knights is on the move. He sneaks around and leaps from a tree to a small opening on the roof, where he manages to slip inside. He's aware of the risk, thanks to his captured comrades, but the potential rewards are just too tempting. What he didn't expect, though, was Morong already lying in wait for a rat to fall into her trap. Looking super relaxed, the girl asks if he's from the Ares Guild as well, which makes the knight recoil, having not sensed her presence at all. Then she asks him to just hang tight for a moment so she can blow off some steam. In a flash, before he can even process what's happening, the knight's scream is the only thing that's heard. One thing our hero didn't anticipate was all of Hukonu's data being completely wiped. But at the spot where he was supposed to meet his friend, he finds 2 knights already lying in wait. For a second, our hero thinks of C, but then he remembers that he already went home. One of the knights, in turn, assures our hero that he doesn't need to worry about his friends. But the truth is, Hayonu is already planning a little visit to the knights himself. Suddenly, some guys are yeeted off the building, and the 2 assassins dive right after them, like it's some kind of extreme skydiving challenge. The X-rank S number 8 in the lineup, who goes by Frost, is already holding a spear, and he just hurls it. But our hero is just like, nah. He catches it effortlessly and says he's going to throw it back, but it vanishes into thin air, only to boomerang right back to him. Without a moment's hesitation, he swings with all his might from behind. The word is, this is the returning sonic spear which always boomerangs back to its owner. Then out of nowhere, a flurry of papers swirls around him, creating a paper fortress. And guess who's orchestrating this? It's the top mage of the knight's aesthetic. Besides his paper tricks, he's got magical weapons in his arsenal. Place Frost gives the hero props for still grinning, but Hayonu is just roasting them. So Place Frost charges forward, hoping to make him eat his words. The hero thinks, wow, they're faster, but still not nearly fast enough to catch me. After a punch, some magic projectiles hit the ground, and boom, smoke fills the area. Using the smoke as cover, Place Frost sneaks up on him, but the hero has ninja-like reflexes and blocks the attack. The mage is like, let's blow some stuff up, and helps his buddy out with a bang. Hayonu realizes he needs to use a special move even if it isn't perfected yet. Suddenly he vanishes. Then bam, he reappears right behind the strongest guy. They're all on edge as he says, this move is called conversion distortion. It's a footwork technique. But Aesthetic replies, I was ready for this. The hero's feeling the pressure for not having his mana control on point. Place Frost is back with another sneak attack, while another hit comes from the front. The mage is firing mana spears to slow him down, while the lancers unleash a combo attack. His conversion distortion is still a work in progress and requires some setup time. But suddenly, the hero looks completely calm, as if he's laying a trap. Place Frost thinks he can win if he just strikes first. His next move through the mist makes him believe he's won, but surprise, that's exactly how he gets caught. Place Frost should have known the hero's durability is rank S++. His attack wasn't a knockout, and now he's in for one heck of a ride. The hero asks, ever been on a roller coaster? Because you're about to be. Overnight, that house was completely wrecked. When Sahan returned, he just thought, where do I even begin with this mess? All he wanted to know was when he could start cleaning it up. Shion shows up and exclaims, wow, this place is a total disaster. But she jokes, well, at least everything is sorted out now. Luckily, the Hunters Association covered the damages and nobody was injured. But the boy says, check out this video that's going viral on my phone. It's the one where the hero grabs Place Frost by the hair, drags him to the top of the building, and then slams him down like a meteor. Even Shion is shocked, but hey, the crowd absolutely loves it. But just like last time, the hero dodged the reporters, and now his phone is blowing up with messages. He just had his number changed and says, dude, you need to be more responsible. Anyway, Hayonu hands over a gift as an apology and says he's off to use the magic circle again. After he leaves, the boy inspects the gift and sees it's an SST plus rank artifact, yelling, now we're even. At Soon's guild, the heroes are catching up on the news about Martin Brand. Aesthetic spilled the beans after dealing with him. It turns out Martin, the guild master, was the one who ordered the hit. He was hiding in a secret lair, and he recorded everything for proof. Finally, Anna announces, the circle is complete. But she looks completely wiped out. He asks to be teleported to the Ares Guild headquarters. But first he tosses a phone to Anya and says, use this one from now on. She gets all excited, which surprises Hayonu. When the portal activates, bam, our hero is teleported into a cave. And it's a dark cave, not Ares' office. His first thought, Anya betrayed me. But surprise, someone's already there, all like, hey, nice to meet you. Martin's even like, whoa, you know me already. Hayonu doesn't miss a beat, flexing about the assassins he just trashed. But Martin's just like, nah, those knights were just bait, dude. I'm the guardian of the 9th floor. Hayonu tries to pull rank, but no dice. Nada. Turns out he's a climber, which is wild for a guildmaster. Our hero's thinking, great, a multitasking problem. Martin's like, you know why I sent those coordinates. Our hero's all confident, but surprised it's a trap. Hionu's like, whatever, you, and charges in without hesitation, but bam, a barrier stops him cold. And Martin's like, this isn't your average barrier. It not only blocks, but yeets him backward. When he regroups, he's shook because there's a ton of magical weapons aimed right at him. So Martin's like, let's do introductions again. Martin goes on, I study motives. A savior for the weak, a doom for the strong. Call me the imposter. Then boom, Hionu attacks and our hero is dodging like a madman. He can't get close and realizes he needs to use conversion distortion, but where with a barrier like this, any weak attacks are a total joke. Our hero starts prepping a magical attack, the kind he uses on other climbers. He wants to use a Sura attack, but it's too slow, so he switches to plan B. Hionu charges forward with his mono wings, smashing the barrier with a divine kick. The barrier's down, and he follows up with a strike from above, but a few simple words from Martin completely zap the power from his attack. Martin's just like, nope, and drains all the mana right out of our hero. Then with one solid punch, he sends Hionu flying several yards away. Our hero's like, no mana, what? Martin explains, we're in a frozen mana zone, bro. He reveals he's been watching Hionu since the Guardian hunt started. Turns out most of our hero's skills are mana-based, but he is so over this lecture. Martin asks, you get the situation? Our hero retorts, we're both toast. The Ares guild leader is like, true, I'm out of mana too, but I've still got artifacts. Hionu can't even use his footwork, so he gets tagged while trying to bail. And his resistance is useless since the artifacts are S plus rank. Our hero thinks he's stuck, but inside the barrier, he starts hunting for the source of the mana. Freeze, and boom, it's the spear. He gets closer and finds a strong barrier, but it's not strong enough to stop him. After a quick counterattack, he's on the ceiling, launching himself at Martin. He remembers an awesome kicking move he read about. The divine kick of the Thunder God. The impact is epic and he's ready for round 2, but Martin's just like, too bad. And he strikes with his spear. It almost nails our hero, but he dodges at the last second, skidding across the ground. Even without mana, our hero's skills are lit. Martin's impressed, so he decides to show off some of his own. He's got the Divine Sword of Askarin, which can borrow the powers of other weapons. Alright, buckle up, because this is about to get epic. So get this, they managed to cram over 24 powers into a single item. Wild right. In the blink of an eye, Martin is right in Hionu's face, and poor Hionu feels like a turtle in a race totally outpaced. And to make things worse, his mana is frozen, so dodging. Yeah, not happening. Martin isn't just chilling after one hit. Oh no. He switches up his sword, and just keeps wailing on Hionu until he's coughing up blood. Then Martin whips out the one weapon he didn't clone because he's got the original. He pulls the legendary sword, Gigantomachia, from his inventory. And with that beast of a weapon, he doesn't hesitate for a second. He just lets it drop on Hionu, burying him like a bad secret. Boom lights, smoke, and a massive explosion. But even Martin's like, whoa, what just happened? Because even though he went all out, Hionu's still standing. Barely, but standing. Anyway, Hionu's got a question, which is a little odd, seeing as he's on the ropes. He finally asks why they're trying to off him. Martin's like, it's just easier to clear the floor by taking out its guardian. As for climbing the tower, it's all about claiming the throne. Hionu is still clueless about this whole throne business, but Martin is ready to wrap this up. Then Hionu's all, thanks for the battle tips. Now I'm going to make you vanish. But first he pulls a disappearing act himself. Hionu bails to the system room, and since he's pretty beat up, AB swoops in to help him tweak the place. Back in the cave, Martin's fuming because he can't track Hionu's location to finish him off, but then he spots a mana thread just hanging around. And since teleporting is just a spatial jump, that thread means Hionu isn't really gone. Hiding in another dimension isn't something just anyone would catch. But Martin's on it, ready to end this for good. In AB's dimension, she's shocked to be on the tower's first floor, but even more shocked that Hionu is still hurting despite the mana treatment. She's all, we need a potion or healing artifact stat. A climber who can copy artifacts and freeze mana. Yeah, that's a mess. Hionu can't stay here for more than 20 minutes, but he tells AB with a grin that his training is complete. She doesn't get it, but figures it must be a good thing, so she says she'll bounce, but tells him to come up with a better plan this time. Hionu just gives her a pat on the head, because he's sure this time it's going to be lit. Finally, without needing a rescue, Hionu steps out of the dimension, looking all casual. Martin's been waiting, and he's like, welcome back. But Hionu just laughs, because he knows Martin's about to get wrecked. Martin, totally ticked off, gears up to smack down Hionu's cockiness. Hionu's been mastering tons of martial arts in the tower, most of them imaginary, but his main focus wasn't actually martial arts. The Flora movement The art of blending flowers into a tree was more of a concept to him. In stories, it's called a principle, but since he could never quite nail the technique, he stopped training in it. He had plenty of masters in his head, but none who could clear up his doubts. But in just 6 hours, Hayonu had a major light bulb moment in the system room. All those hours spent following tips from books and battling climbers with opposite fighting styles. All of it finally gave him a way to master the Flora movement principle. Martin's expression changes when he sees his attacks, bouncing off Hayonu, who shouldn't be able to use mana, but is still totally chill. There are no visible changes in him. And besides his wounds, the dude has no artifacts on him, but something definitely went down in those 6 hours. Martin was just planning to mess around a bit before taking out our hero, but now he gets it. He can't waste any more time. He needs to finish him off now, especially when he sees Hayonu planning to block with just one hand. Martin's confidence comes rushing back. But then poof, our hero's hands start vanishing into thin air. And out of nowhere, a piece of Martin's armor goes kaboom. Hayonu keeps up the slick moves, and with just a tap on Martin's gut, sends him flying with the Supreme Leader's Mega Punch. Then the dude charges in and smacks Martin from top to bottom, slamming him right into the ground. From his advantageous position, Hayonu tries to strike again, but Martin dodges, forcing him to back off. Model. Getting back on his feet, Martin warns our hero that he's in deep trouble. He's got a seriously grumpy look on his face, and the vibe around him is practically screaming danger. Turns out this is pure mana we're talking about, not just some cheap artifact trick. It's explained that the weapon Gigantomachia has the ability to borrow stats from other weapons, but our hero just dismisses the warning like it's a toddler's tantrum, which only ticks Martin off even more. Deep down, Martin knows his body can't handle this much power, and he needs to end this with one single epic hit. So the weapon comes crashing down on our hero with all its might, putting an insane amount of pressure on his hand until boom, an epic explosion erupts. Martin is dreaming of victory. But as the dust settles, any thought of Hayonu being cocky for using just one hand is completely shattered. And to make matters worse for Martin, he sees mana being exhaled from his opponent. Actually, it was Martin's own energy, but Hayonu, being the cool guy he is, decided to return it with a Mega Punch. So using the first move of the Flora style, he unleashes the 1,000 Reflective Punches technique. Martin takes the full force of the hit, desperately trying to hang on, but the power is on a whole other level, completely wrecking everything in its path. In the end, only Hayonu is left standing, and a notification pops up, congratulating him on defeating the hidden climber. Even as Martin's body begins to fade away, one item remains behind. When he picks it up, a message reveals it's an S+ grade subspace for item storage. At the same time, the item attempts to identify what's being placed inside and recognizes the Gigantomachia. So the S+ rank item gets stored, identified as the Giant King's treasure that can split the skies. Hayonu, however, thinks the reward is kind of lame because the subspace can only hold 15 items. Anyway, it's time for him to head back, but he realizes his clothes and phone are a total mess. Just then, someone opens the door to the room, telling their master it's almost time to leave. Unfortunately for this newcomer, he definitely didn't expect to find our hero there. Without missing a beat, Hayonu hugs him, sending the poor guy to the floor with a single punch. And since the guy's already beaten, Hayonu decides to take it easy and casually threatens him to hand over his clothes and phone. 3 days later, at the Korean branch of the Hunters Association, everyone is buzzing with excitement, hearing that Hayonu is going to reveal his attacker's identity on a live broadcast. Naturally, the moment he shows up, everyone has their cameras ready and waiting. And as expected, our hero announces that he'll be leaving right after he makes his statement. Everyone there was already aware that some thugs had tried to take out his friend at his house. And conveniently enough, our hero not only discovered who was behind the attack, but he also has it all on tape. In the recording, the knights themselves admit that Martin was the one who ordered the hit. And even though it might sound fabricated, he assures them he has plenty of other proof besides this. So he declares that he is eagerly awaiting a formal explanation from the Ares Guild regarding their actions. 3 days later, in the Gangdong, district hordes of reporters are swarming our hero's house, bombarding him with all sorts of questions. But inside, he's incredibly busy because he just revealed that they are all inside a tower and Earth is merely the 9th floor. He can't quite wrap his head around it, and neither can Seo Yan. Our hero, however, doesn't think it's that big of a deal, but he can see that his friends are worried. Deep down, he knew this revelation was coming because he was just as shocked when he first found out. But he knew he had to spill the beans sooner or later. Seo finally understands why Hayonu is always doing good deeds. With everything now out in the open, Seo asks if our hero went to stop a climber this time. But he shakes his head, explaining that he went to mess up the Ares Guild, and since it's still standing, he's spilling Martin's secret to the entire world. In the end, the hero's friends are so loud, he can't stand being in the room any longer, especially since even though Sion is skeptical, Hyunwoo cheerfully insists, "I'm totally healed 100%. When the hero finally steps outside, he's greeted by a swarm of journalists. But the real shocker is that his disciple is there too, with a limo ready to roll. Mirong proudly announces she's there to pick up her master, but Hyunwoo looks more worried than excited. And then it's the hero's pal's turn to be gobsmacked when they meet Meringue. One of his friends even asks who the others are, so she explains they're his personal guard. But since the hero isn't a fan of the idea, she sends them packing. Seon, meanwhile, is still trying to wrap his head around the Imperial Dragon standing right there in front of him. Sion explains it's a title given to the top 5 hunters in the world. Hyunwoo's mind is blown because back when he was her teacher, he was completely out of it. He barely taught her anything useful, so it makes zero sense for her to be this strong. Mirong, however, suddenly drops to her knees, pleading for her master to forgive her for failing to uphold his teachings. Specifically, his words that no one should ever stand above her, only the sky. But as she's dramatically spilling her dark past, Hyunwoo has no choice but to bop her on the head and give her a good scolding. Anyway, even after getting lectured, Mirong acts like she's enjoying every second of it. Sion tries to jump into the conversation, but her intense vibe makes him back off immediately. Inevitably, his friend asks about their relationship, so the hero explains she's his disciple, all while continuing to lecture her. Still learning that the 5th-ranked hunter in the world is his disciple definitely messes with Sion's ego a bit, with everyone making such a big fuss. Hyunwoo is starting to get seriously annoyed. Seeing this, Meringue immediately offers to wipe out everyone there, but the hero's just like, nah. He doesn't even bother to explain why before his attention shifts to a message he's been waiting for. Now he's set on heading to the Sunnai district to relax for a while, after all those punks from the Aries Guild finally sent their reply. Later at the meeting spot, the hero sits down and explains he only came because the man across the table wanted to speak with someone involved. He then asks to hear what the Aries Guild's co-founder, Coward, has to say. Internally, Coward is whining about having to deal with the fallout from Martin's disappearance. Hyunwoo's reveal at the press conference, combined with the Guildmaster vanishing, is a disaster because if Hyunwoo defeated Martin, he's on a completely different level. In any case, knowing he needs to handle this quickly, Coward asks what the hero wants. Without wasting time, he promises that they will offer their full support. But he completely flips out when he hears the demand to hand over all the guild's dungeons and leave Korea. To back up his point, Hyunwoo says that thanks to the former guildmaster, he knows all the shady business they've been up to. And from the look on Coward's face, it's clear every word is true. But showing a bit of mercy, Hyunwoo amends his demand to just 40% of the dungeons. He makes it clear there's no room for negotiation, which leaves Hyunwoo looking quite pleased with himself. Leaving the building, Meringue is already waiting, and just as Hyunwoo asked, she has dismissed the guard she brought. Anyway, the hero decides to head home and Meringue does her best to hide her disappointment. But the moment he's distracted, her gaze locks onto Coward's desperate expression. And when Hyunwoo steps outside to check out his disciple's limo, she seizes the opportunity to have her crew teach the co-founder a very painful lesson. The order is carried out in an instant, with the Coward screaming for mercy as he's slammed against the wall. What he really can't figure out, though, is why the Imperial Guard showed up themselves. One of the guards points a finger at the Coward, blaming him for the whole situation. And even though he's completely clueless about what's happening, he's punished anyway. They give him one final warning. They don't care what he does, but if he ever bothers Mirong again, he's toast. In A's dimensional space, the girl is complaining about how freezing it is. Hanu tells her she can call him whenever she needs to, but she explains there's a restriction in place. A explains that whenever the Guardian enters the system room, she's locked out of summoning for 5 days. Changing the subject, Hanu asks if any of his skills leveled up. He checks his stats and sees that his agility has gone up. Av also chimes in that his personality descriptions are looking better. So Hanu gets all hyped up thinking this new skill will come with some epic perks. But plot twist, he needs to level up more before he can get any other cool upgrades. He flops onto the couch, bummed about the slow progress, but AB offers a tip, saying the Guardians might be willing to spill some tea. A B starts talking about a group known as Reclimbers people who challenge the tower again after reaching the top, meaning they might have some juicy info. The thought of the imposter reminds Hanu of his goal to claim the throne, though he's still in the dark about what that actually means. And oh snap, he realizes it's time to go, but A isn't making the same mistake twice. This time she remembers to ask for the PlayStation again. Feeling the pressure, Hanu quickly grants her wish. Meanwhile, over in Guyiryo, the massive construction of the Hanam building is quite the spectacle. But Mirong is completely nonchalant about it, saying it's a worthy gift for her master, even if it makes him feel a bit awkward. Se-han is just standing there speechless because the land was previously government-owned. Hanu is like, seriously, how much cash did you drop on this? She replies that it was peanuts compared to what she received from him, which makes Hanu feel a little guilty for getting the royal treatment. Cutting to the chase, Miryong asks if he'd like a tour of the inside. While she's trying to read his expression, Hanu blurts out and asks if she's some kind of weirdo, which, spoiler alert, does not go over well. Later, inside the mansion, Se-han takes a friendly jab at Hanu, but he just brushes it off and asks when his disciple is heading back to China. Miryong looks a little bummed, thinking he sees her as a bother, but even with her guild duties, her top priority is still Hanu. Feeling the pressure of her attention, Hanu gently sends her on her way. After she's gone, Se-han gets curious and asks if something went down between the guild and his buddy. Hanu tries to put it out of his mind, but he can't ignore Miryong's overwhelming devotion. Finally, he changes the subject and asks Se-han when he's heading to the US. Se-han explains that he got a message from the International Association. It's probably about the new S-Class rankings being updated. Remembering that higher rankings mean more money, Hanu is pumped to go cash in. Se-han agrees it's a huge honor, and Hanu is definitely on board with that. A few days later, they arrive in the United States. Hanu arrives at a massive building that houses the entire International Hunters Association. It's mind-blowing, right? Miryong immediately offers to build an even bigger temple for him, but he politely declines. Finally, Se-han meets Mr. Liam, who gives a warm welcome to both him and Hanu. Se-han introduces Mr. Liam as a senator on the council, and they exchange polite greetings. Mr. Liam tries to shake hands with Miryong, but her reception is noticeably colder than Hanu's. Liam's a big fan of Hunter Hyonu. He asks if he's here for a ranking check, but let's be real, it's pretty obvious. So he leads everyone inside. After a moment, the senator opens a door to the evolution room for S-rank hunters. Here, you touch the orb in the center, and it compares your data with everyone else's. Our hero is like, lame, no epic challenge, but he quickly zones in on the task and heads to the orb to flex his power. As his hands get closer to the orb, the tension is real, and finally the results pop up. But judging from his face, it might not be the news he was hoping for. Switching over to Xiao Yan, her team is celebrating a win after a long grind. But this time the monsters were on another level of tough, leaving her completely wiped out. Or maybe they just got smarter. Who knows, Xiao Yan decides to chill instead of stressing over it. After all, while checking her phone, she sees news about the hero causing chaos again. Even with C around, she's worried because Honu is anything but ordinary. A few days back, they debated delaying a labyrinth expedition that was only 2 weeks away. In the end, Xiao Yan and her pals agreed to take a breather. Xiao Yan, already knowing the situation, asked if C was tagging along with the hero. She also mentioned she couldn't go since she had a meeting to wrap up that day. The girl was about to bounce, but C stopped her, saying he had a question. He asked what kind of gifts girls are into, which was honestly pretty awkward. A few days later, we're back at the Ares Guild. The CEO is having a total meltdown. The group's shares tanked after the leader's death, and all his awesome gear vanished. But his real headache is that Hyonu swiped 40% of his dungeons, making him totally flip out. In his rage, someone barges in. He hates interruptions, but the visitor reveals he's Mason, a big shot from the International Hunter crew. Mason. He explains that he's tight with Martin, a name the coward knows all too well. Mason says things look rough, but instead of roasting him, he offers a friendly hug. He says Martin wants to help and that he'd be upset to see his guild in shambles. To make it clear, Mason clears throat, tells the coward to just follow his lead. Switching back to our hero, a message pops up saying his power can't be computed. He's annoyed, but the magic gizmo keeps displaying the same message. A worried Liam tests it himself and finds out his own rank has dropped. So at least the machine isn't busted, but Liam is still totally confused. Meringue takes a deep breath to say something. Embarrassing, but Honu yells for her to zip it. Anyway, to help the hero chill out, Liam reminds him there's a banquet coming up. And since it's for the International Hunters Association's anniversary, he should just try to take it easy. Soon after, Honu's munching away, putting the orb drama aside. But mid-snack, everyone's attention is suddenly grabbed. It's Rock, the tank class hunter, ranked 3rd among the S ranks. Everyone gets worried since Rock has a reputation, but Liam tells Honu to just play it cool. Rock's famous, but not in a good way. He's known as the Killer Hunter for his shady activities. Finally, Rock zeroes in on Hyonu and tells him to stop fooling around. He's good at handling the cocky types, but our hero just shoves his hand away, throwing the shade right back at him. Looks like Rock has no choice but to teach him a lesson. Liam tries to stop the brawl, yelling for Rock to chill out, but the hero effortlessly dodges the first hit. And from the look on his face, he's sure he's not the one who's going to regret this. With the Supreme Leader's fist, the wind from the punch alone sends the guy flying like a paper airplane. The hero then jokes that he might have hit him a little too hard, making Rock madder than ever. Sun is in disbelief as he witnesses the legendary tanker's moves firsthand. Using his unbreakable immortality skill, Rock tears a chunk out of the ground and launches it at the hero. But the boy remains unfazed, effortlessly shattering it with a single swing of his arm. Rock used that as a diversion to get behind him and land a devastating blow. The resulting shockwave alone drags several guests backward. Liam knows he has to stop this fight because it's playing right into Mason's hands. In the end, Rock is bragging about landing the first hit and causing some damage, but to everyone's surprise, Hayonu just laughs it off. The attack barely tickled him, and now he's excited because it's finally his turn. Hayonu clenches his fists and throws a punch that smashes right through Rock's defenses. Rock is still on his feet, but the hero is already behind him, ready to turn him into a punching bag. After a few solid punches reverberate through the hall, he compliments Rock's toughness for still standing after his beatdown. But it's not long before he hits the floor defeated by a hero who barely even broke a sweat. After all, Rock wasn't just some random tanker. He was the third-ranked hunter in the world. So beating him in a test of strength could mean he's the new number 3. Inside a super creepy isolated temple tucked away behind massive gates, a man is completely focused on leveling up his powers. Suddenly someone appears, hyping him up as the ultimate demon for having already mastered his epic move. Hello, Elma. To be honest, the kid wasn't surprised at all. And his master had fully expected it as well. For a guy who has mastered every martial art, from Chayama to Zhongpa, being called a genius is just another Tuesday. So they ask him what the next step is on his grand quest. Without a moment's hesitation, the top-tier rank S hunter Mushin says he's going to climb to the very top to meet his original master. Later, after the chaos at the association news spreads that Rock got completely destroyed, and Seo just casually says, "Meh, I'm not surprised." Seoku agrees. Why worry about the main character? But the girl is concerned his power trip might end in disaster. I mean, trying to dominate the hunter world with his bare hands is definitely going to anger some powerful people. Changing the subject, Shoen asks if her friends have heard any gossip about Sei lately. Then he asks why. She reveals that he might have gotten a girlfriend, but Sean is being super secretive about it. Meanwhile, Liam feels bad about what the main character had to endure yesterday. After that chaotic day, the party was cancelled, and Rock was carted away by the rescue team, leaving the hero in the spotlight. So Liam persuades the main character to go to a hotel with him. Once they arrive, he says he wants to have a quick chat. The hero agrees, but first he tells Morang to wait outside, which totally confuses her and deepens her grudge against the senator. Finally, after having the door shut in her face, she's left feeling incredibly dejected. But even when he's alone with C, there's an awkward atmosphere that bothers the guy. He assumed she was a social butterfly since she's always so cheerful around Hayonu. But since that's clearly not the case, he tries to get her attention. Remembering her favorite topic, he asks how she and the main character met, which seems like a good strategy. She agrees to tell him, but on one condition. Since he's game, Morang shyly asks what the hero's favorite things are. The guy is a little taken aback, thinking of Hayonu's bottomless appetite, but he settles on money. Hearing that, Morang immediately dashes off, saying she'll be right back and slamming the door, which leaves the guy completely baffled. In the hero's private room, Hayonu skips the small talk and tells the senator to get straight to the point. Then, being direct, Liam assumes the hero already knows about Mason, who is also in the association, mentioning he's backed by some influential government figures and a few top-tier hunters. Despite his calm demeanor, he's in need of a new ally. So Liam extends an offer for the main character to join his team. After the big reveal, our hero zips back to his hotel room so fast it would make your head spin. Changing the subject, the main character asks who his friend plans to give the items he brought to, but his buddy keeps it under wraps. Flipping the conversation, he asks about the chat with Liam, but our hero claims he wasn't asked to do anything specific. That non-answer leaves Han dying to know what the senator is really plotting, but since the main character has an S-rank disciple and almost single-handedly took on a world-class guild, his mere presence is a game-changer. Even the rumor of them teaming up would make Mason nervous. And then he asks about his reward for getting a scoop on the situation. The main character says he can just teleport over anytime, even though that wasn't exactly part of their deal. But hey, at least Liam sent him a teleporting invitation to the upcoming Top 50 Hunters banquet. Over at the Ares Guild's headquarters, Coward reports that the Wild Ones have calmed down just as Mason predicted. The CEO is still curious about the kid's strategy because Ares collapsing should have been a sure thing. Besides, the excuse that he was just doing Martin a favor wasn't convincing enough. Coward knew he had messed up and was now on the defensive, trying to protect what was left. He apologized for spacing out, mentioning he had a few things on his mind to sort out. But instead of getting angry, Mason presents the man with a gift, a mysterious little black orb whose purpose remains unknown. With that, Mason promises that if Coward cooperates, he'll spill the secret to controlling the guild members. Meanwhile, across Washington, in a hospital, the S-rank tank class Hunter Track Rock is in pretty bad shape. He's in a world of pain, but he jolts upright when he senses he's not alone in the room. It turns out that Mason has decided to pay him a little visit. Mason gets straight to the point, warning him about our hero, but this news does nothing to calm his nerves. He's never experienced pain like this before with his impenetrable body, and it feels eerily similar to Mushin's technique. And speak of the devil, Mushin himself appears, asking if it truly is that similar. And not one to skip the pleasantries, Mushin gives them a formal greeting. Seeing Mushin, Mason understands immediately. The young man's training is finally complete. So with their ace now in play, it's go time. Fast forward 2 weeks, and the top 50 Hunters banquet is in full swing. Liam is starting to worry that the main character might be a no-show. Eden, the number 4 ranked S-rank hunter, tells the senator to relax. Riley chimes in saying that while most people are SVP by email or note, the senator was convinced our hero was different. But now time is up. The congressman declares he can't wait any longer. Inside, all the bigwigs are gathered, buzzing with excitement. Plenty of high-ranking individuals are there to forge alliances and make connections. Liam is making small talk about the venue's reconstruction by mages when Eden pulls him aside, warning him about some suspicious new arrivals. Among them is none other than Mushin, the top-ranked hunter. Riley is baffled as to why he's here, considering he's been missing in action for years. Liam gets a bad feeling, sensing that trouble is brewing. Sure enough, someone approaches Mushin to ask if all the hunters have arrived. Upon hearing they have, he promptly makes a nearby guest's head disappear. Mushin's attack is completely ruthless, and it turns out Liam's worries were spot on. Later at the Orin Guild, the resident mage asks why our hero doesn't practice this somewhere else. Honu is busy setting up a teleportation circle, apparently forgetting he's in his own guild hall. It's a major hassle for her since she has to restrict access. Anya is definitely not thrilled about having to move. She'd have to start all over again. But Seoyan is totally unfazed by Anya's hard work, leaving her bummed out even though our hero tries to console her. She's been pulling all-nighters on it, and it's already taken her 2 weeks to finish. But our protagonist steps in to help lighten her workload, which makes things a lot better for her. Finally, Seoyan asks Hayonu why he took Liam's offer. Our hero's practical answer: easy access to the teleportation circle. Seoyan isn't buying that he just wants to travel, but he's sticking to his story. Deep down, he's antsy to get going, sensing that something bad is about to happen. Suddenly, just as he's about to step into the magic circle, someone starts banging on the guild door, screaming for help. They realize it's the same guy the protagonist locked up earlier. Seo rushes over to see what the commotion is, but the second she sees the guy, she slams the door shut. To be fair, not everyone can see someone in that condition without totally freaking out. Eventually, our hero opens the door again, finding the guy in a really sorry state. He's so desperate to see the light of day again, he's ready to spill everything he knows. Even Hayonu is surprised since he only locked the guy up for a month, but this is a golden opportunity. Meanwhile, back at the Hunter's Banquet, all hell has broken loose. Important guests are scrambling for their lives, while the villains are picking off anyone they can get their hands on. Liam is risking it all to guide as many of his colleagues to safety as possible, but he's more terrified by the fact that 3 S-rank hunters, all in the top 50, were wiped out in under 5 minutes. Rox is already hot on his tail, ready to claim another victim. He would have landed a fatal blow if Eden hadn't shown up ready to take down the wild maniac. Unfortunately, Riley's already tied up in a brawl with another ranker. She's struggling, screaming for her boss to run as Eden is also getting overpowered by the enemy tanker. In the end, a desperate Liam drops to his knees, screaming and demanding to know why they're doing all this. Mushin reveals it's a necessary step for world redistribution, a cryptic answer that only raises more questions. Finally, better late than never, Hayonu shows up at the event with Meringue. And with a beastly hunter like him on the scene, Mushin switches up his game plan. When he gets there, the first thing our hero wants to know is why the place is a mess again. And of course, he turns to Liam, the organization guy, for some answers. But there's no time for chit-chat because Mushin jumps in asking if he was the one who took down Rock. Hayonu's all, who's this dude? So the guy introduces himself since his master's clueless. Meringue spills the tea. He's the top dog in the world rankings. Mushin grins. Perfect timing, Hayonu. It's time for you to get wrecked. And he's not shy about his motives, openly declaring he has to take Hayonu out to climb the tower. Before our hero can even process what's happening, he gets smacked by a blast of dark energy but manages to block it. And now that he's heard the word tower, he starts thinking he might be up against a climber. Using his analysis skill, he checks out Mushin's stats, and they are completely off the charts, all S rank. But Mushin's like, chill, I'm not a climber yet. but I'm going to be because I need to level up to reach the top. And with that, he vanishes and reappears right in front of our hero to take him out. His punch is faster than a TikTok trend, so fast our hero has to dive back to dodge it, but he's not backing down. He flips into a kick and lands a solid hit, but bummer, it doesn't even leave a scratch. Mushin grabs his leg, already analyzing his fighting style. As fellow martial artists, Mushin is pumped to test their skills against each other. He starts with a mega punch that sends our hero flying through several walls. Meanwhile, Meringue is totally freaking out for her master, but he's not alone because Rankers 2 and 3 are also stepping up to take on the girl ready to rumble. Outside, the guys are locked in a wild brawl. Mushin's fists move so fast they seem to vanish, making it tough for our hero to block. What's more, he's ticked off because his enemy claimed he wasn't a real climber. But this pressure feels familiar. Finally, Mushin is no longer underestimating him. He unleashes his magic powers, his secret weapon, right from the get-go. Mushin senses that something is off. He's a little worried because the mana around them is intensifying. This is all thanks to the weeks of research our hero put in. Asura's nullifying fist is a bit slow, but if he can just grab the guy, it's game on. So even though repeating the 10-step extermination isn't feasible to boost his mana, Hayonu decides to go all out, channeling the power of a goddess. Mushin feels the pressure from the hero's skills. As Hayonu stretches out his hands, a massive amount of magic surges from him. Then, using the martial art of the god Asura, he delivers his ultimate nullifying punch. The energy release is massive, even pushing our hero back a bit, but the end result is a letdown as Mushin stops it with just one hand, not even a scratch. Hayonu is baffled that his attack was countered, but the martial artist is done talking and smacks him hard from behind. The hit is powerful and Hayonu hits the ground dizzy, but his enemy is relentless and kicks him away. Finally, Mushin can't help but comment that Hayonu has it all wrong. He explains that there's nothing impressive about the hero's skills. His control over his mana is sloppy. It's just a raw, uncontrolled release. Then he taunts him, asking if that's all he's got, because as someone who has trained for centuries, he won't go down that easily. That last part, however, wasn't what our hero expected to hear. Based on his stats, Hayonu knew the number 1 ranker would be tough, but he hadn't considered a skill like memory regression. Mushin reveals that he's just a regular human, but one with a skill that lets him train forever, allowing him to master all martial arts and transcend his mortal limits. For our hero, this doesn't add up, but he's more focused on bracing for the next attack, because after all that talk, Mushin is ready to school him on what real martial arts look like. The hunter's palm wind erupts, and he zips behind our hero like a ninja. Then bam, he lands the Cheonma's fist, sending the kid crashing to the ground like a meteor. Even though he's hurt, the kid isn't done yet. He pulls off the blue dragon kick and a reverse spin kick. Plus, he throws in the cursed wind fist and the demon dragon strike for good measure. Finally, he busts out the celestial dragon style and wraps it up with the divine northern sky move. All you see is an epic flash of light, and Mushin is just waiting, looking totally hyped. Then he spots the hero is still standing and is like, whoa, respect. Hayonu knows that if it were anyone else, they'd be toast by now. So he considers bailing to subspace, but then he realizes Miryong would be next on the hit list. So he stands his ground, ready to keep fighting, which catches his enemy off guard. Even though he's wiped out, he knows he has to use his secret move or it's game over, but his body is on strike. Then after tanking a bunch of hits, the system is like, here's a durability boost, bro. And back with the martial artist. He's still giving him props, but now he's getting serious about ending the fight. He unleashes the flying dragon attack, and bam, a magical dragon appears, but surprise, Hayonu has vanished and pops up behind the martial artist, who totally whiffs his shot. So the hero seizes the moment and dishes out the Cheonma's fist. This time the tables have turned, giving our hero the upper hand. Hyunu's rampaging mana suddenly calms down, and it's not due to any martial arts technique. Although the martial artist is confused, our hero has questions of his own, so he simply starts mimicking his enemy's kicks. No problem. He even copies the divine northern sky technique just for fun. Mushin is completely floored, and the hero explains, I've been observing you. Hyunu had been channeling mana into his eyes to analyze his opponent's movements, and it was surprisingly easy because the technique's flow was so seamless. But it came at a cost, even though it was his only option. Despite taking some damage, the martial artist is in disbelief that his moves were stolen. There's a huge difference between watching a technique and actually performing it. But thanks to all of the hero's incredible experiences and with his massive mana reserves and wide ki channels, he managed to pull off the impossible. And now he's ready to put what he's learned into practice. Meanwhile, back at the hunter party, the area is a wreck. Liam is not only injured, but also panicking. With the other hunters incapacitated, he fears Meringue can't handle the top-tier rankers alone. Rock, being a jerk, taunts her about her small stature, and she curtly tells him to get lost. But Rock is far too arrogant to even consider leaving. So although she wants to watch her masters fight, she decides that taking out the tanker might help Hyunu. In an instant, she lands the first blow, aiming for the second strongest hunter and slamming his head into the ground. Rock is stunned because he didn't even see her move. Mirang explains, "You were never safe to begin with, because even before you angered me, you'd already committed too many sins. You deserve to be taken down." Returning to the hero's showdown with the top S-ranker, the two are trading blows mid-air like something out of a video game. Explosions tear up the street below, but they fight on relentlessly until our hero lands a powerful hook, sending Mushin crashing into the rubble. Now the martial artist is fuming, realizing Hyunu possesses the ability to grow stronger mid-fight. It's an ability only true martial arts masters possess, so he decides it's time to go all out. A sinister black energy begins to ooze from his body. After a sudden gust of wind, the hero is faced with a nasty surprise. Mushin has fully transformed, embracing his power as a descendant of the demon god. Our hero thinks that this is beyond the power of a normal climber, but Mushin is confident that victory is now his. Still, the hero isn't afraid because he can pull off something just as incredible, being a martial arts prodigy himself. However, when he recalls Cheonma's martial skill, Hyunu remembers he couldn't copy that one before. But now that he understands the essence of martial arts, he can perfectly replicate it. As an expert, Mushin recognizes the technique instantly. It's the signature skill of the Thunder God. Back at the association's ruined gathering, Mirang is completely overwhelming Rock, who is now flailing around helplessly. For someone who was always seen as powerful, being defeated so easily twice in a row was a massive shock to his system. But Mirang couldn't care less about his bruised ego. So after knocking him out, she simply states, "It's not about skills, it's about martial arts." Besides, she has no time to waste. Her master is in the middle of a serious fight. Returning to the main showdown, the scene is filled with the spectacular light of their powerful techniques clashing. Even with his opponent's new power-up, our hero is still able to go toe-to-toe trading blows. Hyunu's body is screaming in protest, but Mushin is starting to sweat, fearing he might actually lose. Since it was a newly copied technique, the Thunder God's skill was rapidly draining the hero's mana. Mushin, on the other hand, was worried his defense might go poof, so in their state, they both knew they couldn't keep brawling there. Before launching an attack, the hero spots a black vortex creeping up and dodges. It messes up everything it touches, barely missing him. But Mushin thinks the death vibes should clue the boy in on the move. Seeing this, the hero roasts the ranker for using magic instead of martial arts. But all Mushin cares about now is stopping the boy. So he channels more of that black energy, forming a core in his gut, and fires up the demon god's extermination. All that energy blasts out in a powerful hit. Since he managed to land it on the hero, he chills out, but not for long because he sees Hanu somehow holding that energy with his hands. And then, poof it, vanishes with a cheeky grin on his face. Mushin can't believe this is real life. But as the boy was taught before now, the hero's ready to teach and leveling up his martial arts. From the critiques, he unleashes the second coming of the Thunder God on Mushin. The energy beam is more epic than anything, and the explosion is off the charts. Yanu, though, isn't fazed by his own magic, and finally the system dings his victory. With this win, his info. Authority levels up from low to medium, and he gets a heads up about a forced summoning to the system room in 3 days. Finally, even though he won, the hero's not looking too hot. But he scores an item called Mushin's Incomplete Origin, spilling the beans on his training secrets. But terms like Reserve List, Assistance, or Labyrinth Stone Meter are total gibberish. Finally, Mirang shows up with Liam, and the hero can finally grin and celebrate, cause even though it was tough, he still came out on top. Although from a distance, a sneaky camera catches all these moments. At a shady round table somewhere mysterious, the black climber hears about the hidden climber's defeat plus the reserve. So he finds it all pretty juicy, thinking there'd be no drama. The truth is, humans don't level up easily. But in Crisis, they totally step up. One of the round table peeps asks if this will be a problem for the climbers, but it's said that at least Mushin hadn't met a high-ranking member yet since he was a reserve. But in this member's view, the Guardian will never meet a higher-ranked climber, and the other nods in agreement. After all, even though he's riding this fake victory high, his end is just around the corner.